Jeffrey Gons is presiding.
Thank you. Please be seated. This is a matter of State of Washington versus Edward C. Troyer Jr., Pierce County District Court, case number 1AC 002225. These proceedings are being live streamed through the Pierce County District Court website. Viewers are reminded, however, that they are prohibited from photographing or audio or video recording these proceedings without the prior permission from the court. This prohibition also applies to courtroom observers. Only credentialed media, which have been granted permission from the court in advance, are permitted to photograph, audio, and/or video record these proceedings as outlined in the court's November 4, 2022 media coverage order. To courtroom observers, jurors have a duty to decide this case based only on the evidence provided. To ensure both parties receive a fair trial, it is my duty to minimize the risk that jurors are influenced by external factors. For that reason, courtroom observers are prohibited from wearing clothing or accessories with political or social justice messaging. If you are currently wearing or displaying anything that meets that description, please cover it up or put it away, and the court thanks you for your cooperation in advance.
Your Honor, is there a way to up the volume inside the courtroom? Because they couldn't give me headphones. They said they didn't have any, so I'm having difficulty hearing.
I think that we're doing the best we can, but I appreciate your concern.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
And defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Over the lunch hour, we looked at the sections that the court cited in Teglin's, and again, is it all right if I make my argument sitting down?
Oh, yes, please.
So, starting at 127, section 103.6, at the bottom of the page, to be relevant, the rebuttal must relate, this is under opening the door, of course. To be relevant, the rebuttal evidence must relate to the principal issues at trial. And an opponent's witness cannot be contradicted on a collateral matter. It is this distinction between material and collateral matters that gives the trial court broad discretion in administering the open door rule. And I talked about that earlier, Your Honor. We believe this to be collateral. It doesn't go to the central issues in the case or principal issue in the case. And then some of the examples given by Carl Tegeland here, examples of not only being inadmissible and confusing evidence. He cites Benston versus Sunny World International at 14 Washington Appellate, 2nd 91, an embezzlement trial. I'm sure the court's read this in the note. It's an embezzlement trial, or excuse me, employee's testimony in an employment discrimination trial that her employer falsely accused her of embezzlement, did not open the door to introduction of the employer's evidence of 110 allegedly missing receipts for transactions on a company debit card, discovered after the employer terminated the employee. And the employee's testimony was responsive to or presented in anticipation of evidence the employer had previously discovered 20 other missing receipts on company debit card before firing the employee. On the facts and circumstances of the case, the evidence in question would have resulted in confusion of the issues under ER 403. So not only is this collateral, but I think under this case analysis, it's confusing. I mean, for the jury to hear from the sheriff about his career and about the incident and about what he's accused of and his denials, to have a collateral subject matter of a Facebook interaction he had with somebody years ago is confusing at best. It doesn't bear on the principal issue in the case, and it's confusing under ER 403. But then we go on constitutional considerations, that counsel should be alert to the possibility that admissibility on an open door theory may be restricted by constitutional considerations in criminal cases. And then federal case law makes it clear that the defendant's right to confrontation prevails in the event of a conflict between the right to confrontation and state law governing the open door rule. As I said earlier, this could result in a mini trial. I don't even know if I can find this person. And I'm also making a request here in my argument for the name of the person that sent this email to the prosecutors for authentication, because we don't even know where it came from. But the right of confrontation here is completely compromised to non-existent because we really can't confront these people, whoever sent the email and the person in the Facebook exchange. Then next, on opening the door to hearsay, in the next section, as a general rule, the notion of opening the door is concerned with relevance, not hearsay. But going on, testimony that makes a factual assertion but does not include hearsay does not open the door to rebuttal by hearsay. And then it goes on, etc. But then the final section, and it's at page 130, under section 1036A, again, constitutional considerations. Counsel should be alert to the possibility the admissibility of hearsay on an open door theory may be restricted by the constitutional considerations in criminal cases. Federal case law makes it clear, again, that a defendant's right to confrontation prevails in the event of a conflict between the right to confrontation and state law governing the open door rule. There are some
Referencing on that topic Crawford versus Washington.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Are you referencing Crawford versus Washington concerning the right to confront?
I'm just referencing Teglin and not specifically Crawford versus Washington.
Thank you.
But I will find that and then cite it, Your Honor. I think the other problem we have with this is that it is hearsay upon hearsay, so that compounds the difficulty of the confrontation clause, that we're not going to be able to in any way address what is in this, double hearsay, quote-unquote, document. And I don't even know if this person's been interviewed. Will you pull up Crawford? What was the case site again from the court? Crawford versus
Washington.
Washington. Thank you. I'm looking for it in Teglin. We're just pulling that up, Your Honor. Okay. Thank you. I just want to go down a bit.
It's the case that talks about Sir Walter Raleigh and the right to confront, and
Right.
it's.
I remember now.
I just wanted to make sure I understood what you mentioned.
Federal.
Constitutional considerations concerning confrontation in the Sixth Amendment. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that that's what you're referring to. That's why I brought up Crawford.
Yeah, it's a 9-0 opinion delivered by Justice Anson and Scalia. The court decided with Crawford and ruled that the Sixth Amendment's confrontation clause gives defendants the right to confront witnesses and cross-examine their testimony. This includes testimony police gather. Court reasoned the framers intended the confrontation clause to prohibit out-of-court testimony as evidence against defendants. By allowing out-of-court testimony, if it was reliable, the Roberts decision departed from the framers' intent. The court overruled Roberts. Chief Justice Rehnquist, joined by Justice Senator O'Connor, concurred but opposed overruling Roberts. That's what I have. That's all? Okay. Where's the case? I just have a moment, Your Honor.
Of course.
Your Honor, in that case, it's directly on the principal issue in the case. So he says, he stabs a man he claimed tried to rape his wife. During his trial, the prosecutors played for the jury his wife's tape-recorded statement to the police describing the stabbing. They contradicted him. Central, principal issue, that he stabbed in self-defense of his wife. Very central, very principal. Because it was pre-recorded, he couldn't cross-examine the statement. He claimed that the playing of his wife's statement without a chance for cross violated Sixth Amendment right. That's completely different. And they also said in that case that it was reliable. There was a finding of reliability from what we tell. So that's in opposite, Your Honor, I think, to what we have here, which is just Facebook exchange in a document that's double hearsay, that's not authenticated, and it doesn't go to the principal or central issue in the case, it's collateral. And so for the reasons I've cited also in Teglin, it shouldn't come in. Thank you.
Nate?
If I could sit as well, it does help me see
Please.
my notes. That's why I was using the box last week, so I appreciate that we're doing it this way now. This isn't collateral. They have put his character front and center extensively, and they've made it a central theme of their case. So it's not collateral. And I think what is really true here is that if the issue that they're saying is collateral is really just a different way or a confused way of what the state sees as this being a matter of weight, not admissibility. And as the court pointed out on the opening the door cases on page 129 in Teglin, multiple cases cited that when used for this purpose, hearsay is admissible. And then when the defendant is asked about this, he can admit it, deny it, or explain it. This isn't a mini trial. It's just allowing the state to rebut the evidence, the sweeping claims of his good character, and then he can respond to that however he wants.
So what happens if if the question is asked of him about Exhibit CC and he denies it? What proof is there going to be admitted that would tie up that evidence that would justify asking the question?
So, I'm not going to be admitting the exhibit, but I do believe that I would be stuck with that answer, that if he denies it, that I would be stuck with the answer. I don't think that he will, and I don't want to speak for him, but according to this report, he admitted these events, he just had a different explanation for them. So, but if he were to deny them, the state's position would be that I would be stuck with that answer.
The report states that somebody wrote that was what the defendant said. So whether we know it's a defendant's statement or not hasn't been established.
He was interviewed in that report, Your Honor, and he agreed that that's what he wrote. He just had a different characterization of it. And I believe...
Where did he agree that he wrote it?
He was
Within
interviewed...
the exhibit itself?
Yes, he was interviewed. There was a recorded interview, and the exhibit itself gave excerpts from that recorded interview. Again, I don't believe that Sheriff Troyer will deny it, given that there's a recorded interview to back this up. But if he chooses to do that, the state's position is that we would be stuck with that when evidence is introduced to rebut character evidence and one uses specific instances of misconduct, then the defendant can either admit, deny, or explain that. It doesn't then dissolve into this mini trial. Now, the court gave us 2 cases to look at over lunch. I did read both of them. I think the one that is more applicable is the harder to pronounce one, which is Resumption.
That's a good business practices case.
Let me make sure.
The defendant asserted good business practices, but he hadn't filed tax returns. And
Right.
that was a discussion case.
Yes, correct. And rather than try to pronounce it, it's 12 Win App 350. And that case is a straightforward application of evidence rules 404A and 405, which simply says when an accused testifies as to his own good conduct, he may be cross-examined about specific acts of misconduct unrelated to the crime charged. This is an evidentiary decision which would be reviewed for abuse of discretion. We believe that the court's ruling prior to lunch is on solid legal ground, and we would ask the court to maintain that ruling.
Steve, want to provide any comment about potential Sixth Amendment right to confrontation in Crawford versus Washington, and whether this is hearsay that the defendant would have a right to confront, this being Exhibit CC?
No, Your Honor, because on page 129 of Teglin, there are these cases, which is in the same series, the same edition of Tegland, which talks about Crawford, and the treatise specifically says that for this purpose, which is rebutting character evidence, that hearsay is allowed.
What would the question be that the state would anticipate asking on this topic of the defendant?
As few as possible. Unfortunately, it does take a few questions to get there. Something along the lines of, Sheriff, you testified on direct that you've never had a single complaint for harassment, and yet in 2015, a citizen who was the cousin of a mentally disabled man who died in police custody filed a complaint with the sheriff's office indicating that he felt a Facebook message by you put him in fear of losing his job and in fear of retaliation from law enforcement. And then just briefly the facts. This citizen Facebook messaged you after a civil lawsuit was resolved that your department got off cheap in the Hillstrom case. And you replied, "Hi Rex, in the sport of fairness, I'm letting you know I sent your message to my friends at Seattle and King County Police Departments. I have also sent it to my friends work security at Quest and Safeco Fields. You seem to have some animosity towards police. I hope you're not basing your opinion on that Seattle newspaper article. That's not close to being accurate. I will be including your photos as well." And I'm sorry, a preliminary question would be that by clicking on the citizen's post, that Sheriff Troyer was able to see that this person worked part-time security at sports stadiums and saw that he was pictured doing so alongside with uniformed officers. And that would be it.
Does it matter whether the employment agent, the location of where the individual worked was not notified?
No, because what is at issue here is the Facebook response message that he took to be a threat to his job and that he took to put him in fear of retaliation from law enforcement. It doesn't matter whether or not Sheriff Troyer actually followed through on that. What matters is that he sent this message. And the jury can determine.
There was not a sustained, or at least from what I'm aware of the evidence, that the sheriff department did not sustain the complaint or find any wrongdoing.
If Sheriff Troyer wants to say that, he's free to do so.
So let me ask a better question. Does it matter with respect to whether this is proper, specific instances of conduct of bad character, that it was not found to be a violation of departmental policy?
It does not matter because the court is not bound by a Pierce County Sheriff's Office decision on whether or not a policy was violated. He testified that he's never had a complaint of harassment. This is a complaint of harassment, and it rebuts his testimony to that effect.
Who says it's a complaint of harassment?
Well, the court did about an hour ago, as did the state, which is.
But I can't testify in front of the jury, so who's going to tell the jury this is a complaint of harassment?
As I said in my preliminary questions, Sheriff Troyer, you have indicated that you've never had a complaint of any kind, including for harassment. Isn't that correct? And yet this citizen in 2015 filed a claim that he, and I can use the word harassment or not, if the court wants me to leave that word out, I can, but he filed a complaint that you sent him a Facebook message that put him in fear of losing his job and in fear of retaliation from law enforcement. And if the jury wants to determine whether or not that is or isn't a type of harassment, they're free to do so. I think it is.
Your Honor,
Defense.
this is not a filed complaint. It is not a filed complaint, it's just been misrepresented to you. It's not a harassment complaint, it's just been misrepresented. It's part of an email. And this individual sent a picture of himself with a message to the sheriff standing with law enforcement, and then said, and this was also not included in what counsel just said, that Sheriff Troyer's people should be in jail in this case, is what he said. And then there was a response. Sheriff Troyer never reported him anywhere. He did have concerns about this person working with law enforcement with an attitude that the sheriff's deputy should be in jail. And that's it. So it's not a complaint, it's not a filed complaint, it's not harassment, it's not anything. And also, when counsel was just citing from Tegland at page 129 on some of the hearsay cases, that there was no citation to the Supreme Court case in there on confrontation clause. That's a whole separate matter. So she's misrepresented you that somehow when it's dealing with hearsay, you don't implicate the confrontation clause. I just conclude by saying that if we're going to resolve these kind of, the court's going to resolve this kind of a matter and looking at the resolution of where this should go, that the confrontation clause prevails in the event of a conflict between the right of confrontation and the state law governing the open door rule. So it's collateral, it's double hearsay, it's not authenticated, it doesn't go to the principal issue in the case, and it is, it's collateral. It shouldn't come in.
Yeah,
Thank you.
first-
Is it you provided a little more factual detail than what I recall reading in Exhibit CC. So is it the defense position that the defendant is aware of this Facebook comment and response, independent of the Exhibit CC, that the defendant's aware of that? Because you mentioned that he had sent a picture with respect to law enforcement, he being the alleged complaining person, and it sounds like from hearing that the sheriff is aware of this particular exchange that happened years ago.
He is now, Your Honor. I mean, I've shared it with him. I sent it to him Friday night. And so, and it jogged his memory of someone sending that picture to him.
So he would be able, if he would be able to provide personal knowledge about what is indicated in Exhibit CC that has been discussed.
Right, he may or may not. I mean, he may testify to that or not. I mean, it's his, of course, right to testify, but I think he would like to address it. Obviously, if it's going to be addressed, if the court rules that this comes in. But that is, what I've just added is from Sheriff Troyer in terms of what he remembers. He didn't remember it until, is that right, until I sent that to you Friday? Until I sent it to him Friday. I also just want to ask one more time that we be allowed to know who sent this to the prosecutors, because we need to be able to authenticate it. If the court's inclined to rule against us, I think it's completely not authenticated.
Anything else from the state?
Just, this isn't an email. This is an email that had a report from an internal affairs investigation attached to it, and that's what the state is referring to. And if he wants to say in response, I didn't remember about this until you just brought it up in court, he's free to say that. But I will again say that in this report filed by Lieutenant Kelly from Internal Affairs, that he was interviewed about it and he admitted this exchange.
You know, I want to be very clear about this. This is not an internal affairs complaint. It has a whole different document, basically creation and file appearance. This is an email that we don't know who sent it. It was between a couple of retirees in the Sheriff's Department going through a number of different things. It is not an internal affairs complaint. It is not filed. And the question that he answered from me on direct examination was about filed complaints for sexual harassment, racial discrimination, use of force. So I want to be really clear about that. But we keep kind of, coming back off of these and calling them a complaint. Not a complaint. Saying it's filed, it's not filed. And I want this to be very, very clear, because calling this a complaint is erroneous and misleading. Thank you.
No response.
No response?
No, I thought you looked at me, so no.
All right, several items here. The defense has chosen to present character evidence of the defendant in its case in chief, which it is entitled to do under ER 404A1. It has the ability to do that, and it has chosen to do that. The court does not agree with the defense concerning that the question may have limited any official complaints made. That was the question. However, that's not the only area where character evidence of integrity as a person and a law enforcement officer was testified to by the defendant. The defendant testified, "I am a law and order guy." He testified that he has never had various types of complaints filed against him, including others and harassment. So while it is true that Ms. Bremner's questions were very specific about specific limitations on the character evidence, the defendant's testimony was far broader than the question that was asked. And the defense, which is why I brought up earlier today about why only the person asking the questions can object to a narrative question and then theoretically have the answer be stricken, is the defense did not object to the narrative answer, and therefore, since the narrative answer was not objected to by the defense, it's admissible in the case. Additionally, at least based on my reading of Tegland and the case law there, if the defense wants to bring in a character trait or a character evidence to then potentially argue to the jury that he acted in conformity with that, it's an all-in or not situation. If you're going to raise that he is has character and hasn't had has proper character as a law enforcement officer and hasn't had complaints filed with the department, well, that just opens the entire door to say, well, fine with not the department, but you can't have the jury think he has character traits of integrity when in fact outside of a potential official complaint there may have been something done that would show less than integrity as character evidence. So the court does find this is not a collateral issue with respect to character evidence that the defense admitted concerning integrity and truthfulness. The defense concern about the Sixth Amendment right to confront, hearsay, the Sixth Amendment right to confront, and Crawford versus Washington is well taken with respect to that, which is why the court asks the state, well, how are you going to prove this? What's it going to be? And the state's indicated that they're not going to offer Exhibit CC. If they would have said they would have, I'm not sure it would come in because it's hearsay. There are significant Sixth Amendment issues with respect to that document. And actually, Ms. Bremner's right. It's like double hearsay or maybe even triple hearsay based upon how you get from A to B to C to the statement of what the defendant allegedly made in this document. So it's not being offered, but even if it were, Exhibit CC would have a lot of hurdles to go through before the court would choose to admit it if the court were asked to do so. But the defendant apparently has, and maybe it was because of the refreshed recollection of this, but from what I understand now, he may be testifying that he has personal knowledge about this particular interaction with this particular citizen. If he has personal information about this, of which he's able to testify about, then it would be proper for the state to ask whether he does have that information, what was, if the defendant knows what was said by this individual, and the defendant's response to that. That information is going to be admissible if the state chooses to want to bring that in. There will not be any reference to Exhibit CC in the questionings unless the defense wants to do so, because for the reasons I've already indicated, Crawford would be, I mean, this has come up, not a lot of time to research it. I think I know Crawford pretty well with respect to the Sixth Amendment concerns, and I'm not going to in any way stray against the defense with respect to what could be a substantial Sixth Amendment concern as indicated by the Crawford case. And there's been training for years on this with judges, lawyers, and so I'm not going to stray into that. I'm going to follow Crawford, and Crawford just says it's not admissible. This type of hearsay on a core issue in the case is not admissible unless the person, well, in this case it may be persons, are available to the defense. And at least from what I'm aware, they're not. And so that's the reason why Exhibit CC would not be admissible, or any discussions about Exhibit CC or its contents would not be admissible. Now, if the defendant has personal knowledge about this, he can be cross-examined about it. Whether or not if the evidence becomes admitted that this citizen, the response that was given of contacting the citizen's employer could amount to harassment, that's really for argument and weight to be given by either side. I've heard both sides, they have completely different versions of whether this is harassment or not. Some of it's a legal definition of harassment under the harassment statute. The jury's not even going to hear about any of that. It's just a matter, I suppose, of argument of saying that wouldn't this type of activity show lack of integrity by a law enforcement officer by contacting a citizen's employer? And that's the end of the argument. That's it. The jury can decide if the answer to that is yes or no. And again, it's relevant because it goes to character evidence that the defense has chosen to admit. I also want to comment on what the defense has said with respect to authentication. I don't see any way from what I've seen so far that Exhibit CC could be authenticated. And exhibits under the evidence rules have to be authenticated before whether they're admissible or not, whether or not the jury would hear about that. And so that's why the court's going to prohibit any discussion about Exhibit CC unless the defense wants to talk about it. And if they do, then they can. That's up to them. But the state's going to be prohibited from specifically referencing that document.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any questions from the defense about the scope of the ruling?
Yes, Your Honor, just one. We wanted to make sure that the state does not refer to this as a complaint, because it's not a complaint.
Well, there won't be any discussion about Exhibit CC, so there wouldn't be a reason why it would be referenced as a complaint.
Exactly. I just wanted to confirm that, Your Honor. Thank you.
I agree.
Thanks.
So,
Questions from the state?
yes, so I can't call it a complaint by a citizen?
Is it Exhibit CC?
No, I'm not referring to CC. I want to ask him, you testified on direct that you've never had any complaints filed against you, but you're aware of a complaint made by a citizen named Rex Harper, aren't you?
That would be permissible because you're not referencing Exhibit CC.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I don't step on the court's ruling.
Now, what the defendant may testify to may preclude further questioning about that. I mean, there's some assumptions that the court's made with respect to, if he has no personal knowledge, that's going to be one answer. If he has personal knowledge and has a recollection of it, he would be able to answer some questions, but it's not going to, potentially, if I think I understand your question, you may have some information that you would want to use
Jog
from
his
the
memory
exhibit,
with.
but that doesn't mean that the exhibit's going to be referenced, or it's going to be referenced as a complaint, that document is going to be referenced as a complaint.
Correct, I wasn't going to do that.
Just a second.
So I,
Section what?
So I
I
think
answer
I'm
your
clear.
question?
I think you did.
Oh,
yeah, at this point, the existence of Exhibit CC is not going to be communicated to the jury.
But that was never my intent.
Your Honor, I don't think it's appropriate, again, I'm raising the same objection to not call it a complaint. It isn't a complaint, so it mischaracterizes what the evidence is. It's
Well, if that's your
incorrect.
client's answer, then that's your client's answer. If the answer is it wasn't a complaint, then, okay,
Well, it wasn't a filed complaint, so then I guess it ends.
well, I can't predict that.
No, I know, but it should. Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Okay, I said, one other thing I just want to state for the record, I'm reminded by Mr. Gross, he doesn't have personal knowledge. The sheriff doesn't have personal knowledge of whether it was filed as a complaint. What we have, he's never had a filed complaint. Everything he's checked, this is just an email, and doesn't say there was a filed complaint. So I think there would be lack of personal knowledge, and there'd be an objection.
Yeah, that's contrary to what the discussion we can see and hear
That's-
from this table.
You may be correct depending upon the verbiage the state uses in asking the question. You may be incorrect depending upon what the verbiage the state uses in asking the question. So I can't pre-rule on that because that's going to depend upon how the question is asked.
I can guess what's going to be asked, but I've made my argument, Your Honor.
Anything else from the parties?
Nope.
No, Your Honor.
I would offer exhibits N through Z, which are the photographs, as long as the court's ruling the character's open. Because we actually offered those to show that with the issue of race in this case, that Sheriff Troyer has a racially diverse family, and these photographs N through Z depict those. Those exhibits were refused. But if character's open, we might as well request now that those come in before he takes the stand again.
As character evidence?
Well, you said they were character evidence. I don't agree, Your
wanna-
Honor. They
well,
were
I-
refused.
It's your motion, so I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, the reason why that would,
Well, they're admissible because they show his family, many of whom are mixed race.
what's the relevance of that?
Because the accusation in this case is he was profiling a black man in a primarily white neighborhood, and he has a racial animus.
Well, the court's prohibited any testimony or argument about profiling.
Well, I bet that Mr. Cedric Altimer testified that it was basically racial profiling. I'm a black man in a white neighborhood. That was his testimony, and that's the state's witness. And we offered, I guess, his character evidence now that it's open, of his good character and family.
Still object.
Court is going to revisit its ruling on this. Exhibits N to Z are admissible because they're potential character evidence that the defense has chose to want to raise. Some of them may be cumulative, but there was no objection to that. So N to Z are admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we'll start with that now. So when you go back up there, we're going to go through those. And then we're going to go to Ventura. Does that sound good?
Anything else from the defense before the jury is brought back?
No, thank you, Your Honor. I'll start at the home now.
Anything from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Dorian. Oh, yeah, mark those first. Yes, please.
I'm going to use the Elmo first, just warning you. Thanks. No, you don't have to go that far. For some reason, Karina couldn't.
Exhibits N through Z, N as in Nancy through Z, have been marked as admitted by the clerk.
Thank you, Your Honor. You're good. Are you smaller than Karina? It's all right if I move this back?
Oh, yes. Since it has been several days over a weekend too, the court is going to give the defense a little bit of leeway with perhaps asking some questions that were answered last week.
Thank you.
But they may be in context with respect to subsequent questions, and so some leeway will be granted.
Thanks.
I suspect at some point, if the state thinks the leeway's gone far enough, they'll let me know and then I'll decide.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now for each photo, you've got to do one more step. Going through them just one at a time on here. Okay. I just didn't want to. I'm going to start with these just to get that done.
The jury is returning to the courtroom. Thank you. Everyone may be seated. Members of the Jury, I hope you had a good weekend. Thank you for your patience, but we're going to continue on. Ms. Bremner.
Thank you, Honor. We recall Sheriff Troy.
Witness, you remain under oath. You understand that?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Honor. Good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, Sheriff Troyer. I'm going to start with some pictures that we talked a little bit about last week. And with the court's permission, I'll put these on the Elmo.
Granted.
These are now admitted
And
by the
please let
judge,
me
by
know
the
if you
court.
cannot see what.
I will. Thank you.
These are pictures of your family, is that right?
They're not showing.
Oh,
I told, it may take a second.
Oh,
As soon as
thank
we
you.
see it there,
okay.
see it now.
It looks just like that, blurry. Yeah, I'll let you know.
If it's very tiny.
Yeah,
All right, that's what it did
it
last time.
matches the screen.
Right, look out of your way.
Can you move it down just a little bit, the piece of paper?
I think it's a button.
We will get this in focus.
Thank you. They're going to get, I think, some help right here. To the rescue. Thanks. There it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your help.
Yes, I can see it.
Is it in focus?
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Ms.
My
Bremner.
eyes,
Thank you.
it's not the
It's shown in
screen.
this picture, Sheriff.
And this is exhibit number,
This is N through Z, and this is N.
Thank you.
Of that exhibit, Your Honor, those exhibits. Who's shown in this picture, Sheriff? Well, they're in a jury box, but that's just.
Well,
set
they're-
up in bench.
They're in a jury box because this is when I was being sworn in courtroom 100 downstairs in the county city buildings. And they made accommodations to put my family in the jury box while that occurred.
Okay, from left to right in the back row, who do we see?
On the very far left, that's Jaden, my grandson. Next to him is Christian, my grandson. Kid with his hands up is Tyler, our son, and my sister and brother-in-law, Rusty and Michelle, next to him. And then in the front row is Wendy, my wife, and then my granddaughter Bella, and then next to her is my granddaughter Maya.
Thank you. And showing you Exhibit O. Who's in this picture?
That's, on the far left is my grandson Christian. On the little kid next to him is, I don't know the name, that's one of my foster grandkids, somebody else is gonna have to tell you that. And then, next one would be Maya, my granddaughter, and then another, I'm drawing a blank, and then, Bella, my granddaughter, then Jaden, my grandson.
And exhibit, the next one, I think here, probably the writing a little bit, but I think it's P. If you could tell us who's in this picture, please.
That is myself, my grandson Christian, and my son Tyler, when they both went to school together and they're the same grade, and this is when I took them to Las Vegas for their 21st birthday.
I won't ask any more about that. Exhibit Q. Who's that?
That is us at a restaurant down there. When we got down there, the reason why we had the masks on is because there's a mask mandate here, but not there, when we got down there. So it's Christian, my grandson on the left, I'm looking on the left, then me, and then my son, third to the right.
Exhibit R, a little harder to see everybody in this picture, but you've got the screen in front of you. Who's in that? People are a little smaller, I mean. So who's in that picture?
That's me, my grandson, two of my grandsons, two of my granddaughters, and my grandson's stepbrother, and somebody Tyler, my son on the right, and Maya and Bella.
And then Exhibit S. Who's in that picture?
That would be me, my dad, my wife, and my two of my granddaughters.
How about T?
Another place that would be Maya, and then another little kid that lived at our house for a while, and I forgot his name.
Wait,
The one that my grandson Jaden's holding.
okay.
Myself, my son, my wife, my granddaughter, the lady in the black, that first time I think you've seen here is my daughter, Nicole, and she is a foster mom to the little ones that I've forgotten the names of. And I haven't really forgot the names, but I know I'll mix them up, so I'll just call them my foster grandkids
Okay.
that are sitting next to her.
Okay. And Exhibit U?
That's me and the boys. That would be myself, my son Tyler, my grandson Christian, and my grandson Jaden.
And G, okay, and then exhibit number V is there.
Myself and my two granddaughters, Maya on the left, Maya, myself, and then Bella.
And
That's the one of all of us at Halloween Town this year. And my daughter on the far left, my two granddaughters, my wife, and then they got masks on, but I'm pretty sure far right is my son Tyler, and the tallest kid in the back is my grandson Jaden. And that's me with the cowboy hat on.
Exhibit K.
My two granddaughters, Belle and Maya.
That might be X, Ms. Bremner.
I'm sorry?
X, Exhibit X,
It is, Your Honor.
I think.
Thank you. It's great handwriting, I just don't always read it right every time. Thank you. So I think then the next one is that a Y? I think it is. Is that a Y?
What is the law?
Okay, thank you. Exhibit Y.
That's my wife and my granddaughter and myself in Las Vegas at one of her dance competitions.
Okay, and then finally, Z.
That's this Halloween with myself, my son Tyler, and my grandsons Christian and Jaden.
Thank you. You testified previously about fostering kids,
Correct.
and I don't need to go back to the numbers and everything else, but one of your daughters is fostering kids, I think Wendy.
Correct. Our oldest daughter continues to foster kids, and you saw some of them there. They kind of come and go, and
it's not all, in terms of what I just showed you, do you have any mixed race grandkids or kids?
well, as you can see, one of my grandsons is black. My other grandson, the tallest one, is Native American. The same with the two granddaughters. They're registered with the Cowlitz tribe. And so I have two son and a daughter that are Cowlitz, and then 4 grandkids. And then Christian, who is of color.
When you couldn't identify certain of the kids, those were just foster kids of your, I just want to protect you a little bit there.
They're littler ones, and I know their names are Paisley and some, and I just didn't want to mix them up and different ones, yeah.
When we left off on Thursday, I said I was going to play the call. Do you recall that?
The 911 call?
Yeah, well, we call it the 911 call, but it's not a 911.
Well, right, but came from the center, yes.
So I'd like to do that now.
Mhm.
That's 2, isn't it? Is that? It's 6. I had 2 and 6 out. Thanks. With permission of the court, it is admitted, and I'd like to then play that at this time. It's
Present.
Exhibit 6.
No objection.
I'm sorry, state, my apologies. No
Yeah.
objection. That's Exhibit 6, granted, the defense may do so.
It's going to take a minute. Okay. While they're getting that set up, do you recall making that call?
Yes, I do.
And you made it from your cell phone, is that right?
Correct.
Was that your personal cell phone?
Both my cell phones have that phone number punched into it, the 7 full 10-digit phone number to the back line into it. So I'm not really sure, to be honest with you.
What do you use the back line for?
I use the back line to call, to find out when I see stuff going on, even on the streets, to see if people need help, whether it be Tacoma or anybody else I drive through. When I get calls, when I used to get calls from the media, I would call to see what was going on, to see if it was worth them going to the call to save them a trip down. Screen though.
Sorry. Is it working now?
Yes.
Yeah. Working? So, pick up where the question was?
Yes, please. So what do you use that back line?
Well, I use it to call for multiple reasons, even if I know in the past where dispatchers have had problems with calls. I mean, I've had dispatchers and people in tears on certain calls where really heinous things have happened. So I may call and check in with them the next day or later that night. And in the same token, they would call me. It's a two-way line. So they would call me
Okay.
plenty of times to wake me up in the morning and have conversations or to let me know of major calls going on, and unfortunately, the really, really bad ones, they'd call me and always call me on all the ones where our people are hurt or killed.
And in using this, in making this call, before, when you first came into the street where you saw Mr. Altimer, you were parked behind him? You went in, where were you parked vis-a-vis Mr. Altimer?
The first time I physically saw him is when I pulled in behind him. We were both facing the same direction. He got out and approached my car.
And were you ever then in a situation where the cars were facing each other?
Yes, he drove off and went in. After the first confrontation with me, and that's when I called into the dispatch center, he drove off and went into the intersection and turned around somehow or another. I thought it was a U-turn, and came back at me and stopped. So our headlights were facing each other. At that point, I was on the phone with dispatch at that point.
Okay. And so, and when you talked about the confrontation with him, that's when you've already described basically that he was up against your car
Right.
and yelling.
Correct.
And yelling what?
He threatened me, he threatened to take me out, he
Overruled.
threatened to take me out. A lot of it was garbled, I didn't understand, but I could tell by his body language and his face and the tone of his voice and his loudness that he was very upset. And I heard the part about taking me out and his motioning for me to get out of the car and some of that, and that's when I called the dispatch center because I wasn't about to get out of the car. And I stayed on the phone with dispatch from that point on until the first car, I'm pretty sure it was right when the first car arrived.
Okay. And so, when he said threat to take you out, did you take that as a threat to kill?
Between that and his loudness and his body language, absolutely.
Why?
Well, I don't know what else it would have meant, and I can't think if I would have got out of that car, anything good would have happened, and, bigger and stronger than I am. I had no idea who it was. I've never seen him before, never told me what he was doing there, and I wasn't about to escalate the situation, and that's why I called into the dispatch center, at that point to have somebody, and I asked for 1 or 2 units to come, calm him down, correct.
So you had where he confronted you in the car, threatened to take you out, yelling, some of it garbled, is all at your window of your car, is that right?
He's standing right at the apex of my car, at the hood, past my headlights, in between my headlight and my driver's window.
Okay. And you never got out of your car?
Never got out of my car.
Did you say anything to him when he made the
Not at that point. I mean, it was just, kept my window 90%, 90% up, and I didn't say anything.
I'm going to play the call, but so once this happened, when he's yelling these things and the threat, you stay in the car, you don't say anything, and then he goes and turns around to face your car. Is
Correct.
that the right sequence? Okay.
Correct.
Are we ready to play it now?
Radio.
Hey, it's Troy.
What can I do for you?
I'm at 27th and Deidre in Tacoma in North End, about 2 blocks from my house, and I caught someone in my driveway who just threatened to kill me, and I blocked him in. He's here right now.
Okay. Go again with your address.
But, well, my address is 2901 North 5th of View. I'm at
North
27th and Deidre,
Okay.
and he's in some sort of gray car, and was in my driveway, in my neighbor's driveway, and he knows who I am, and he threatened to kill me, and I got him blocked in at 27th
Okay.
and Deidre. I think it's
Okay.
played as Boy Williams, Boy 57. Hang on. I really need just 1 or 2 people here first.
Absolutely. I'm getting the call right now.
Hang on, he's not going to let me leave.
Thanks. When you said, well, first of all, when you said, I haven't blocked in, what did you mean?
We had each other blocked in. I mean, I hadn't moved, he turned around, was facing me, and I guess we were facing each other. He was, going the wrong direction on the street when I got behind him, and then he turned around. So I had him faced in, and he had me faced in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just now, when you said, I just need 1 or 2 units or 1 or 2 guys, what do you say right after that?
I think I'm pretty sure, I hope that they can, is it okay if are they going to be able to hear the tape again later?
That'll be up to the.
Oh, I only say that because it sounds a little muffled here, but I think you can hear it clear.
Another device?
Yeah, if it, not the PA system, so I'd love, yeah. But what I think I say, and I'm pretty sure what I said, is I need 1 or 2 units, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, I just need 1 or 2 units. I mean, I'm only asking for 1 or 2 units because I know how our people are trained, and I've had many things with Tacoma Police Department trained, and I knew 1 or 2 units would be all that would be needed to handle the situation.
Right, and so, I don't know if we can play that back again, but I think at some point, someone thought it was, I need 1 or 2 units right quick, but you're saying I need 1 or 2 units, that's it.
Yeah, I think that would make more sense, but
Just that last part.
Yeah, I'm going back a bit.
I think it's
Okay.
played as Boy Williams, Boy 57. Hang on. I really need just 1 or 2 people here first.
Absolutely. I'm getting the call right now.
Hang on, he's not going to let me leave.
Okay. Does he have a gun or anything?
I have no idea. He looks homeless in his car, but he was in my driveway, and I got my car, and he was in my neighbor's driveway, tried to get my garage. Hang on. Boy William Boy 5872.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I got him blocked in. I'm in a white Tahoe.
Okay.
My own personal white Tahoe. He's taking pictures and video and news.
Okay.
Let's talk
I've
about
got
here.
units.
You said there that he was taking pictures and video of you? And do you know where the video went that Mr.?
I should have said he's taking pictures and/or video of me. I just saw the phone up, and he was holding the phone up and moving around, so I'm assuming he was taking video of me, but pictures and/or video.
And he testified to a completely different route than you did in terms of what happened in this case. Could he have seen you in your car? Do you have tinted windows or anything like that?
Oh yeah, my windows are extremely dark tinted, and they've always been that way. So unfortunately, I don't want to be recognized, and I've had problems, doing the job for 20 years.
Right.
And my windows are tinted, and no, it wouldn't be unreasonable that if he saw me driving, if he knows my car. I mean, if I'm driving, there's two ways into my neighborhood. If I think the routes. He may have taken all that route, but I only saw him from the front of my house until we connected. The rest of the time, I did drive in to my house that one direction, but I never saw another car that stood out or I would have noticed. If there's a car driving down the road with headlights on, it's just a car driving down the road with headlights on at that point.
But he wouldn't have been able to see your
No,
face? is my
there's
question.
no way he could have seen my face.
And then the route that you took and you testified to was just a matter of several blocks, isn't that right?
Yeah, I think we counted it out to be 3 blocks.
Thank you. We can keep going, Lauren, thank you.
Headed your way.
I just need one or two to clip. He was in my neighbor's houses and climbing. Sorry, but
No, you're good.
what's going on? I think they found me. All right.
Okay, stay on the phone with me though, okay? Just so I can make sure.
I don't want
Okay.
to hang up. I'm trying to back up and let him go, but he blocked me.
Okay. And what kind of car is he in?
I don't know, some sort of beat up, chuckled, homeless
Okay.
looking Sion. I gave you the plate number.
Yeah.
Blackness, nobody polite to him, and he just says I'm a racist, wants to kill me. So
Okay.
I don't want anything other than him to let me go home, which is 2
Right.
blocks away, which I just came out of my house.
Anybody else with him, Chief?
No, I'm not mad at him or anything, but
Okay.
I think he might have one of those garage door openers because he pulled into 4 or 5 different houses around the neighborhood and tried to hit the garage door opener button.
Yeah.
My house I'm doing a remodel, so there's so much room, and there's no room in the driveway, so he tried it everywhere else. So he's looking
Okay.
for me.
Okay.
I'm still here. I'm backing up. He's pushing against my car, so I'm just backing up. 27
Okay.
feet.
Okay, they should be there shortly too.
Deidre? So weird. It's like one of those bold
Bizarre.
radio stare downs. He's just staring at me with headlights on. And,
Okay.
I'm glad we're a couple blocks from my house. My husband said to kill me for all this. All right.
Yikes. Did you hear the officers?
No, I don't hear anything.
Don't
It's
hear
a
me?
weird
Okay.
road off 29th and Bisbee, 2 blocks above my house.
Okay.
He's taking video and pictures of me. It's just him alone. It's so weird.
Okay. Did he give you his name or anything?
No, he just said that I was home and saw the lights coming in on out and everything. I looked and he was like pulling in all the driveways. And I thought maybe it was one of those guys that's like kind of a thief that has a garage door opener.
Yeah.
And so I went out and followed him, and he blocked me off and accosted me and said, "You're a cop," and started threatening me, which is not a big deal, but it's part of our deal now, right?
Apparently.
I
Yeah.
mean, he literally blocked me in. And
That's
here
crazy.
comes the first guy.
Okay.
They're right behind me.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so the first cop is right there. Yeah. So, okay.
Okay. Well, if they're with you, I'll let you go, okay?
Thank you. Come with
You
me.
betcha. Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Okay, so thank you. It's Clear you asked for 1 or 2 units, that's it.
Yes.
And why did you ask for 1 or 2 units?
I figured a couple guys that could get there. 2 units for our department would probably be 2 cars, 1 in each car. Tacoma, I guess, runs 2 people in a car. So 2 units is going to be 4 people tops, and 1 unit's going to be 2 people. And they just know how to take care of a situation like that to hopefully calm them down. And like I said before, the first officer that got him down and talked to him did a great job of de-escalating him. He was really mad, as everybody saw, and then slowly got him to calm down. And I wasn't about to attempt that out of his anger with me. And as I'm talking to the dispatcher, part of the routine is we stay on the phone and talk until somebody shows up.
Right.
He's not going to let me off the phone. That's why I repeat a few things a few times to make sure they're getting it. That
Okay.
way the officers know what they're going into. I mean, I would feel terrible, like I said, if the officer showed up and the fight was on and they weren't prepared for it, or something bad happened to the officers that arrived. And I'm just describing best what I saw at the time and what my perception of it was, and I wanted to make sure the cops had every bit of information possible that was out there that they were going into.
Do most officer fatalities happen in minor incidents?
They do. Yeah, that most officer fatalities happen in minor domestics, or sometimes when situations are over, or when you think they're over. At least mine, just the service of a search warrant and things that we do routine all the time is usually when something goes sideways and shots are fired.
Including traffic, minor traffic?
Minor traffic stops. Yes.
You didn't know these officers from TPD, I think you already said.
No, as they kept arriving, their graveyard guys are going to probably be more junior guys, and a lot of them are way younger and look young, and I've never met any of the first 4 or 5 that showed up. I'd never ever met any of them, including my own deputies that showed up.
Okay.
There's my first deputy showed up actually testified that he came and introduced himself to me after being on 3 years. I'd never met him, but I have 800 people though, so yeah.
And you hadn't seen Mr. Altimer tossing newspapers from the car before?
No.
You encountered him?
No.
Okay. I mean, he testified to that, but that didn't happen.
No, I never saw any newspapers. No.
What would have happened if he just told you he was a newspaper carrier?
I think anybody who knows me, I would have, if he was calm and said, "Hey, I'm just delivering newspapers," I would have got out and introduced myself, and maybe said, hey, maybe some suggestions on how not to bring so much attention to yourself at this time of the night or morning, possibly. But it would have been nothing like this. Yeah.
And he testified that he knew where you lived because you had exempt plates. Have you ever had exempt plates in front of your house?
No, I've never had exempt plates. My plates on my car are owned by the county, and they look like regular license plates. That way it doesn't look like a government vehicle. And if somebody were to run the plates, because a lot of people have access to do that if they knew it was me and tried to find me, the registration would go back to the county city buildings, but it looks like regular plates.
And at some point he called you Sheriff Ed. Do you remember him saying that? Seen it on video?
I don't know if he actually said that to me, or I saw him say I was a sheriff on video. 3 months had passed until I even knew this was an incident, and I didn't even know it was his name until the newspaper called me. I never even asked his name that night. I didn't even know who he was. I mean, once he was the paper guy, it was a non-issue. And so I'm not really sure on that one.
Okay. But he never directly told you, I'm the paper delivery person.
Nothing like that at all, or showed me a newspaper, nothing.
And when you testified last week, you testified about a headline in the Seattle Times that says, "White Sheriff Profiles Paper Boy." Now, is Paper Boy your word or the Seattle Times word?
That's a Seattle Times word. The white, I've heard the white sheriff chases black newspaper boy. I have racist white sheriff chases black newspaper boy. There's been many variations of it throughout the headlines and news media. Clear up until this past weekend.
Well, do you call him a newspaper carrier yourself or newspaper boy?
Well, I call him a newspaper delivery person. I mean, yeah, he's not,
That's enough. Thank you.
I delivered newspapers. I was a newspaper boy,
Oh,
14 years old, you have the thing and you go walk the neighborhood. A newspaper boy, but this is somebody driving a car, and I had no idea that newspapers were even delivered at that time in the morning,
2 in the morning?
2 in the morning. I had no idea newspaper. I thought they came at 5 or 6, but I haven't taken the newspaper in many, many years.
Now, did anybody from the Attorney General's office or anyone that you're aware of go door to door to see if there were any witnesses to what happened?
Yeah, my neighbors,
Outside the scope of his knowledge.
no?
If you know.
Over the scope of his knowledge. Sustained.
Let me then, I think I want to turn to Officer Ventura's body cam for just a minute to talk to you about the demeanor of Mr. Altheimer and how the demeanor you saw compared with what we see on the video. And this is exhibit number, don't tell me, I know, 2. Exhibit number 2 that's admitted. Whenever you're ready, just let me know. While she's queuing that up, from the time Mr. Altheimer came up to your car and started yelling at you and threatening, to the time the police officers got there, how much time went by?
I would guess 4 minutes,
Okay.
5 minutes tops.
And then another time frame from the time that the officers, the first 2 officers showed up, and then 3, from when they showed up until when it was basically over, and you went home, how much time went by?
I'd estimate 15 minutes.
Okay. Is that one right? We've seen this before, but I just want to ask you about this quickly, about what we see here with him. Is the phone- It starts without sound, I think, and then you go on the volume.
Hey, keep your hands where we can see them. Hands on the steering wheel.
Is that what you're coming over here for?
Yeah, that's why we're coming over here, okay?
I'm suspicious, huh?
No, because he called saying
I
that...
don't care what he calls
Okay.
for. He's following me.
Okay, we'll figure
Don't talk
everything
to him. I
We
don't
will-
need you to figure out nothing. I am working.
We will figure
I am
everything...
working.
Okay.
I'm a black male in a white neighborhood, and I'm working.
That has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, it
okay?
does.
No.
He's following me.
Okay.
The fuck?
He's getting out of the way, okay?
Okay, he's still following me.
We will figure that out. If...
Yeah, get the fuck away from me. I don't care how many cops show up. He's following me. What? I don't give a fuck. I know he's a fucking cop. The fuck?
Is that where he said, I know he's an effing cop?
So I don't hear any of this going on. I mean, I'm hearing it going on, but I don't have any knowledge of what's being said. It's just garbled.
Okay. Go ahead, please, Lauren.
How many cops for a fucking newspaper carrier? Oh, you guys are some badasses. I swear to God, you guys are badasses.
Stop reaching for stuff, dude.
I'm not reaching for
And
shit.
don't keep your hands on the steering wheel.
My hands haven't moved off the steering wheel.
Okay, can I explain it?
No, I don't need nothing to be explained to me. I'm being followed.
Okay.
He called the cops. Congratulations.
Yes.
I'm coming to and from my house. Ooh, he's committing a crime. He's black.
No one's
He's
saying-
black.
Okay.
He's black.
I'm going to explain.
Oh.
I'm going to explain
I'm
why
doing
we're
my
here.
fucking paper route.
Okay, I understand that. I see all the paperwork in your car.
Yeah,
okay?
congratulations.
He just called saying that someone threatened his life. That's why we're here, okay?
Yeah, I threatened his life
No.
because I walked up to him and asked him why he's following.
When he says he's still following me, are you guys face to face in your cars?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
I have not left my car. I never do through the whole entire thing. Wherever my car's at in these videos, that's where I am.
And do you see any newspapers in that car?
Right there? No.
You can go ahead.
Following me.
You're not under arrest and step out of the
I
car.
don't need to be under arrest. I don't. That's done.
Appreciate it.
You're gonna arrest
No,
me?
I'm not gonna. Come sit right here, okay?
Fuck, I'm working.
Sit on the bumper. You
I'm
got any weapons on you?
No, I don't got shit on me. I'm at work.
We're gonna inspect you, okay?
Gosh, I got a fucking knife in my car
That's fine. I don't care about what's in the car.
to cut my straps on my newspaper.
Okay.
Nothing. We don't need nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing,
If you
officer.
just
What are we
wanna
here
talk
for? What are we here for? Search my car. There's
we're not-
fucking newspapers. This is the second time this shit happened to me.
So we saw him there on Officer Ventura's body cam Can you compare his demeanor that we see here in the exhibit to what you saw at your car?
This was asked and answered on Thursday.
Sustained.
You know, I didn't show him the video. I'm just showing him the video and asking him to compare for the jury what he saw.
Overruled.
So that means I can answer?
Yes.
Okay. At best, it was that. And he was even more agitated to the point where I couldn't understand him a few times in what he was saying. I did have my window up, and I wasn't about to engage with them. But I think at this point, he doesn't think he's agitated. Well, I think most people would think he's agitated. I thought he was agitated, and to me,
Section non-responsive.
Sustained.
Strike the opinion portion.
Sustained.
When he
okay.
came back to your house at 4 in the morning, can you describe and compare his demeanor to what you just talked about and what we saw in that video?
It's exactly the same. When he came to my house at 4 in the morning, I could hear him from my bedroom window. I heard the engine rev up, and I knew there was a car out there, and I looked out and saw that it was his car. He was outside of his car, and he was yelling something about same typical stuff that we've heard a lot about being a black man or black in a white neighborhood, and then something about a newspaper. Said something about a newspaper. I'm getting parts of it, and then he threw the paper into our driveway and got in his car and sped off.
And when you called in about his coming back to your house, did you call the inside line again?
No, I didn't. All I did was I called my sergeant, Mike Blair, who you heard testify to it.
Right.
I just called him to let him know, the document that he came back. I didn't want anything done about it. I didn't want anything investigated. I just called and wanted it documented that he was there in case he came back again that night or whatever. I didn't know what was going to happen. Once again, I wanted to do that because if he would have came back and would have had an incident and I wouldn't have called, would have been a bigger problem.
And so that night or early morning, 2 in the morning, was he arrested?
No. No, I specifically said, as soon as I found out that he was delivering papers, which 2 or 3 people came up to me and said he was delivering papers, I said, well, if he's just doing his job, let him go do his work. I mean, I think I even say that on the 911 call, that I wasn't worried about the threat or anything. I'm used to being threatened.
Okay.
I wanted to let him go do his job, let him finish his paper out. Guy's out working. I just wish he would have told me right at the very beginning, yeah.
Were any weapons pointed at him?
Not that I saw, nope.
And did anybody, was there any physical brutality towards him?
No,
Was there, obviously no shots fired, right?
no,
Was there any police intimidation of him that you saw?
nope. I think Tacoma did a great job.
And how many responding units were there? At the scene?
I don't know. I asked for 1 or 2, and I really learned through this process that there may have been 5 or 6, I think, that actually showed up. Some showed up on their own, including one of my guys.
Okay. I had talked to Mr. Altimer about, at least from his perspective, it being a non-event, because from his perspective, he testified that he hadn't gotten in a confrontation with you. So if he hadn't gotten in a confrontation with you, as he said, that would have been a non-event, right?
Correct.
Objection, irrelevant. It's asking them to comment
Overruled.
on someone else's testimony.
Sustained. To the second objection. The first objection is overruled.
Let me just ask you this. If nothing had happened, Mr. Altimer had not threatened you, had not been upset and angry and confronted you, it would have been a non-event, wouldn't it?
Correct.
Okay. Nothing to follow up on, right?
Correct.
So Officer Hobbs had a body cam, Officer Lawless didn't, and we saw Officer Ventura, of course, had a body cam. So at some point, you had a conversation with Officers Lawless and Hobbs.
I had a conversation with multiple officers that night, I believe, including my own and a few Tacoma, and I couldn't tell you in what order or who. Like I said, I didn't recognize them, and they didn't introduce themselves by name.
Officer Hobbs on a body cam references that you said that you'd been threatened.
Correct.
Is that what you recall about saying to any of the officers?
I did at the very beginning, correct, absolutely.
And did you talk to more than one officer at the scene,
Yes.
regardless of what their names are?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever know Officer Lawless before this incident?
No. I've never met him, or I don't ever recall meeting him. I don't know him, don't know his name, and I've never had any type of professional interaction with him.
His police report, in this case, you did review and said there were some deficiencies, right?
Right?
And I think he took the Fifth Amendment, not wishing to incriminate himself, in a question asking whether that report was accurate.
That's what I heard him say, yes.
Mischaracterizes the testimony.
Sustained.
Did you hear him testify about taking the Fifth Amendment?
Yes,
And he took it about 400 times?
that's what I understand.
Where's the report?
18.
18? The report that I was referencing is Exhibit 18, and you already testified about what you told him about whether there was a threat.
Correct.
And just since it's been time since Thursday, how did he ask you the question?
The way I took it,
Asked and answered last week.
Sustained.
What was your statement to him?
Asked and answered.
Overruled.
I said I wasn't worried about the threat.
Did you ever say I wasn't threatened?
No,
Did you ever
not that I recall or ever, I just wasn't worried about the threat.
Did you ever backtrack on your statement
No.
about the threat? Did you ever retract
Nope,
your statement about the threat?
those are terms invented by the Seattle Times.
Are those your words you even use?
Nope, never.
Looks like we haven't gone through the whole video from Officer Ventura, but you said earlier, the officer did a great job of getting him calmed down.
Yeah, everybody will see it if we watch the rest of it. Yeah.
Watch just a little bit more to see what happens.
What's your first name, sir?
Fuck Cedric, all time.
Cedric? Okay, Cedric. Okay, we just got a call saying that
I'm in danger. Ooh, that's a fucking lie. Now what happens
that's
to
what
him?
we're here to figure
He's
out.
lying.
That's what we're here
He's
to figure
lying.
out, okay?
So what happens to him?
Was there any
What happens to a liar?
We will figure that out.
To get 4
okay?
cops here. How many cops cars are here?
Cedric.
For a newspaper carrier?
Cedric.
I don't need to talk. This don't make no fucking sense. I'm not under arrest, right?
You're not under arrest.
Okay, I can go, right?
No, you're not free to go either.
Why can't I go?
Because we're
I'm
trying
not
to
under arrest? Who's a sergeant? Who's a sergeant around here?
On his way, okay?
Thank you. Please, I'm not under arrest, right? I'm going back to work, right?
No, you're not leaving right now, but you're not under arrest, okay? Do you want me to put you in handcuffs?
This is dumb.
Right now, I'm
Ooh, you're gonna put me in handcuffs for what?
Cedric.
I'm talking?
Right now, I'm just talking to you man to man, trying to figure out what's going on, okay?
It's not a man-to-man conversation. Go talk to him. The one's so in danger. He's in danger. I got weapons.
Cedric.
I got weapons.
You see how calm
I'm
I
throw a
am?
fucking newspaper out.
You see how calm I am?
I pulled into his driveway. If I pulled into your driveway, I'm obviously your carrier.
Cedric. Just talk to me for a little bit, okay?
There's nothing to talk about.
Okay.
There's nothing to talk about.
Did you guys have any verbal altercation?
He's following me.
Okay.
I walked up to his car because he came around the block again for the 3rd time. I approached him. Why are you following me?
Okay.
Because I'm a black male in a white neighborhood? Oh, where are you at? I'm on the north end.
See,
Oh, you don't know where you're at? My wife is black. I don't care.
That's all we're trying to get to is what happened between you guys that made him call
I am working. I am driving a bucket and I'm in a nice neighborhood. I'm working. I'm over here every night. I see you guys every night. Nobody messes with me. But a car that sees a bucket in the neighborhood on the wrong side of the street, throwing a paper out the fucking window, he's suspicious. Oh, he pulls up to another house. He's going to steal a fucking Amazon package off that porch. Check my car. I got 15 Amazon packages in the trunk.
Cedric, I'm not saying he's doing anything. He's not saying he's doing anything. He just says there was an altercation. That's why we're here. Okay?
You guys can be doing so much like that. You guys should. One officer. Oh, you're following a newspaper carrier.
I'm going to be 100% honest with you. The reason there's so many cops here is because he's the sheriff. I'm up who said that we got.
I know who he is. I know exactly who he is.
Someone threatened his life. You have no clue who you are.
The sheriff he's threatened?
Okay.
And you hear him say, I know who he is. I know exactly who he is. And that's you, the sheriff.
Correct.
You keep going a little bit.
He's so threatened. I knew he was a fucking cop.
So
I'm over here every night. 6 days a week.
We're with Tone Police. He's not our case, okay?
Thank you.
So we're totally different entities. We're just trying to figure out what's going on. That's why there's so many people here. Okay? Right. You're not in handcuffs. You're not in trouble right now.
I know I'm not in trouble.
Yeah.
I am working.
But until we figure everything out and make sure everything's covered, okay, yes, you do have to talk to us. You don't have to talk to us, but
It's
you
a
have to
big investigation.
You see them leaving?
Everybody needs to leave. You guys need to walk him home. Follow him home. He needs help. He needs assistance. I got 200 fucking papers. I'm not worried about him. I'm trying to get home. Fuck, I got formula in the car. I'm supposed to be home by 3:30. You guys are slowing me down.
Did you ever threaten any sort of violence?
No!
Okay.
What am I threatening for? I feel threatened. I'm followed. Just because I walked up on him, I threatened him?
Did you make any threats to you?
Nobody made no threats.
Okay.
That's a lie. If I made a threat, I'll tell you, but I didn't. I didn't even go to him angry. I just wanted to know why he was following me.
That's not
Simple.
So, what this looks like is a big case of misunderstanding, okay? He thinks you're doing something, you think he's doing something, okay?
Stop it there. So he seems to be calmed down some here, is that right?
Yeah.
And the officer said this is a misunderstanding, like he said kind of thing, and he seemed to kind of, when I say he, Mr. Alzheimer seemed to be calming down some.
Yeah, it calms down.
Okay. We heard through the state, they talked about when, let me strike that, I'm gonna come back to it in a minute. Still on the incident itself.
It's a good time for the afternoon recess.
It is, Your Honor, thank you.
Members of the jury, no discussing the case with anyone, no research, and I'll have you return to the jury room. The jury has exited the courtroom. Thank you. You may be seated. The court's at recess until 3 o'clock.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sir, thank you, Sam.
please be seated? To members of the gallery, the microphones in this courtroom are very sensitive, and so the court is picking up some discussion among gallery members while testimony is going on and while the court's listening to counsel rulings. So I please ask that you refrain in talking other than during breaks, because we don't want to pick up inadvertent conversation from the audience. It may sound like it's coming from either the court or from the counsel or the witnesses. So please refrain from discussing or speaking out loud until recesses, if you would, please. Is the defense ready to continue?
We are, thank you.
State.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. Please bring the jury back.
And can the sheriff resume the witness stand, Your Honor?
Yes.
Just go ahead.
You can be seated.
Okay, thank you.
Need water up there or anything?
Okay.
You should have.
Yeah, I probably should get some just in case I start coughing. Thank you.
You can get that.
Oh, I don't know what to do.
There you go. The jury's returning to the courtroom. Thank you. Everyone may be seated. For the witness to understand, you are still under oath. Bremner.
Sheriff, can you tell the jury if you feel any responsibility to keep your own neighborhood safe, the neighborhood where you live?
Well, I've lived in my neighborhood for a long time, and we do have what used to be called block watch parties, so we can get to know each other. A lot of my neighbors are elderly and from different countries, and I've helped them out many times. We've had skateboarders come down our hill and get injured. We've helped. We've had victims of crimes, or what to do, how to call the police, try and help them out. We've had our mailboxes punched, cars broken into, like anybody else in any other neighborhood. But yeah, so for 20 plus years, I've gotten to know my neighbors and help them out whenever ever needed.
Why didn't you just call 911 and ask for a Tacoma police officer when you saw Mr. Altheimer driving and acting suspiciously?
Well, when I originally went out, I just was going to go out and see what was going on and see if I could get a license plate. Because of our being crime victims, my wife gets up at about 4:30 she gets up earlier, but leaves at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. And it seems that when she gets up to leave is when we discover that there's been crime in the neighborhood during those type of hours. In the car, wrong side of the road, no lights on, suspicious. Thought I'd go get a plate to check out what's going on, and then it turned into what happened.
Okay. Are you on duty 24/7 as a sheriff?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, police officers have commissions 24/7. I'm the elected sheriff. My hours differ all the time anyways. I go out at night to work and early morning hours, or go out in the evening and don't come home to the next day. Just depending on what's going on. It's been that way for 22 years. And it continues to be that way. I want our people to work. I want our people to, if one of our deputies is driving by and sees a Tacoma police officer in trouble, or sees something happening, citizen becoming a victim, or somebody down on the ground, I would expect them to stop and help.
And was that what you were doing here?
Yes.
Porch pirate. What does that term mean?
I think porch pirate is really not a derogatory term at all. I think it just really goes to people's head. People that steal packages and items, off of people's porches. It's been a term that's been around for a few years, ever since a lot of people take piles of deliveries.
Especially with the pandemic and everything else.
Yes.
Right? We talked about whether or not you even said anything to Mr. Altimer. He says you called him a porch pirate. Did you call him that?
I don't recall calling him porch pirate. I know I said it in the call, and I don't know if he heard it from the 911 tape or where he heard it from. But when he was standing outside his car and he was shouting at me about thinking, God, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Do you want to take
Just a second. About some of the communication there, I might have said something along that lines, and I never said that my wife was black. I said that my grandson was, but it was loud.
Do you even remember saying anything about your grandson, though?
Yes,
Is that later?
it was during it was during some point or another when he was outside the car and facing my car.
Now, there was he came to your house, and I think he testified that something about that he knew that you had a Ring camera?
Correct.
And did you have a Ring camera?
No, we didn't have a Ring camera back then. We got the Ring camera after the people that started protesting in the driveway and yard and frightened my son and wife, and so we got the Ring cameras installed at that point. I think it was April.
Okay, and this happened in January.
Correct.
And so, when he came back, can you describe the way, can you just compare his demeanor when he came back at 4 in the morning to the demeanor we saw in the Ventura body cam?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
It was the same. I mean, I was upstairs in my bedroom with the door shut, and I could hear him. I mean, that's what woke me up, the engine revving up, and I could hear a voice shouting outside. And that's when my wife and I looked out my wife looked out the window, and I kind of heard it, but didn't really think anything of it because I might have been half asleep. But then she got me up, and I looked out within seconds of her looking out, and he was out there.
I think we heard your wife Wendy say that she felt threatened. You have to answer out loud.
Yes, sorry.
Now, Officer Lawless was the one, again, who came by and just drove by and saw the newspaper in your driveway. Did he investigate further?
I didn't even know he came by until he testified here that he did, and I wasn't looking to have that happen. That's why I called my sergeant directly just to document that it happened. I wasn't expecting an investigation or anybody to come, and being in court here is the first I heard that occurred, that they even came by.
Is it of concern in any case when somebody involved in a situation comes back after the fact and acts in a threatening and intimidating manner?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did Officer Lawless investigate, talk to anybody?
No, I didn't. No, I've never talked to him again after he left, ever, about anything. I've never seen him again until he was here in court. And nobody asked me about what happened because I was under the assumption that I talked to my sergeant and documented, and that was the end of it until I heard that they'd come by and looked and saw the paper and one of the comments from the Tacoma officer about malicious newspaper throwing or something. And I didn't even get what he meant by that till now.
There's no such crime as malicious newspaper throwing, is there?
I think that was his point.
Okay. But what was more important was that Mr. Altimer came back to your house.
Correct.
Was he ever investigated further for that by anybody?
No. Not that I know of.
Was the first time you saw Officer Lawless again here in court?
Yes.
Now, there was an exhibit which is some text messaging that's going between some officers. And I think it's exhibit number... I always want it between numbers. Exhibit number J. And you heard about that, right?
First time I heard about it was here.
Okay. Incidentally, do you let your sheriff's deputies group text to each other? Or is that frowned on?
It's not frowned on if it's work-related, and it's to solve crimes, get case numbers, to communicate official business.
Eric, State's to object to Exhibit G being used as a lack of foundation. The foundation was not ever used to admit these. They were
Jay, you mean?
J, yes. There's a difference between showing a specific one to a witness who's
I
able
found
to
it, I found it.
verify that, but we object to the exhibit being used due to a lack of foundation.
Your Honor, I object to the speaking objections, and I'm just going to ask to show it to the witness.
Overruled, it was not a speaking objection. You may show it to the witness, but I understand the objection, so
Foundation.
it's not, the state isn't really making an objection right now, so, but I anticipate it may be coming. So you may show Exhibit J to the witness, and then we'll see whether there's additional objections based upon any questions you might ask about Exhibit J.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I approach the witness?
Granted.
Thank you. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit J. And what is that?
From what I understand, this is the text messaging between 4 or 5 Tacoma police officers about this incident.
Are there some pictures and memes in there?
A lot of them.
And was Lawless one of the Tacoma police officers in that group chat? per your
Yes.
knowledge?
Mhm.
Thank you. It was referenced that in these text messages, that there was a reference to you as a,
Objection, lack of foundation,
Yeah.
and ask for permission to voir dire.
No, I haven't finished my question.
Please ask the question.
Thank you. And this has been testified to earlier, that one of the officers, Lawless, called you a bitch.
Yes,
Do you recall that?
yes,
And you'd never met him before.
correct.
And that also... you
Objection
were-
sustained.
And the basis, Your Honor?
Move to strike the answer.
The answer is stricken.
May I ask for the basis?
This witness has indicated he's never seen these text messages before, so he wouldn't be able to comment on them.
Let me ask this question. Do you know why he would have called you, Officer Lawless called you a bitch, or participated in a text exchange that called you a douchebag?
Objection, speculation.
Mr.
Sustained.
Lawless? Do you know of any reason that he would have any animosity towards you?
No,
Now, you had had an incident with the Tacoma Police Department where you were a victim of a crime, is that right, before this incident?
correct.
And about how long before this incident did that happen?
It was in November, in November before the January.
Can you tell us in a nutshell what happened?
Object to relevance.
Sustained.
Your Honor, it goes to his belief that it wouldn't be report written in this case,
Sustained.
and there would be a delay with the report.
Sustained.
In other words, that's why he asked that there not be a
The
report.
objection is sustained.
Mr. Altimer testified that he'd been followed about 10 times by police officers while delivering papers. Do you recall that?
That's what he said.
Were you a police officer? Have you ever followed him before?
No,
Do you know any of the police officers that followed him before?
no,
And do you know any reason why they followed him before?
only from what he said.
So in terms of chronology, after this happened, there was not a complaint, but there was a call from a newspaper reporter, right?
Correct,
About this incident. Okay. And that was Jim Bruner, is that right?
correct.
And so how long was that after the incident?
I think it'd been a few months.
Okay. And did you feel that his article adequately reported what happened?
No,
And did you talk to any other reporters? Let me strike that. After that newspaper article, did you receive at any point a letter from the governor?
yes,
And were you informed about a criminal investigation?
Objection.
Yes.
Motion in limine.
Sustained.
I'm just asking timing-wise as to why he didn't speak.
Sustained.
Once you knew there was any kind of investigation or a case, you had a lawyer, is that right?
Correct.
And the lawyer was not Nick Gross or myself, right?
correct.
And you were advised not to speak at a certain point.
That's correct.
Can you tell the jury overall what was happening with the defund the police and other movements around the time of this incident, per your experience as sheriff?
Well, there's defund the police going on as well as police reform in the state of Washington.
Sorry, Sheriff, for object relevance.
Sustained.
You know, I'd like to be heard outside the presence of the jury, but I don't want to send them out, so I'll just note that I'd like to revisit this as part of my direct. Do you have any other law enforcement commissions?
Yes, I used to. I was, before becoming sheriff, I was Washington State Gambling Commissioner for 7 years.
Did Mr. Altheimer threaten to kill you?
Yes,
Did you ever deny it?
no.
And how do you feel about all this?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
I'd like to note that too, as well, and I.
Let me, sustained as to the form of the question.
Do you think you should be in here in a criminal case in front of a jury?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled because it's a leading question.
No, I believe that if the Attorney General's office would have made me a part of the investigation instead of the target, none of us would be here.
That's all I have, thank you.
Sheriff Troyer, the Attorney General's office offered you numerous opportunities to give a statement, didn't they?
Objection?
That was-
Objection?
He just said the Attorney
Just a second,
General's
just a second.
office
Objection
should be
is?
part of this investigation.
Objection, since facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
Comment on the evidence and motion to eliminate.
Overruled given the
And
question
comment on
by
a
count.
comment on a constitutional right. Your Honor.
Sheriff Troyer, my
Well,
office.
just a second. Anything else you want to say?
I thought I'd comment on a constitutional right, Your Honor.
Overruled. The door's been opened.
Sheriff Troyer, my office contacted you numerous times and offered you the opportunity before charges were filed to be interviewed and make a statement. Isn't that correct?
Correct, before charges were filed, after the governor sent the letter, there was an investigation being done, and my attorneys told me not to talk.
My question was, prior to charges ever being filed, didn't the Attorney General's office contact you numerous times?
Twice.
And offer you the chance to give a statement?
Twice, yes, they did.
And you declined, didn't you?
Correct, at my attorney's advice.
Now,
I also object, Your Honor, since facts not in evidence and not provided in discovery, criminal rule 4.7.
Overruled.
Now, Sheriff, it's your testimony that when you pulled up in your vehicle, Mr. Altheimer came out of his car and began yelling and swinging and moving his arms and yelling at your vehicle. Is that correct?
Correct.
And it was dark, right?
It was dark, but we
And-
both had our headlights on.
And there's no streetlights in that neighborhood, correct?
Correct, no streetlights.
And yet you could see Mr. Altheimer's muscles pumped up. Is that what you
So I
testified
was-
to last week?
Correct, his body was pumped up in his face, and he was 4 feet from me, 3 feet from me.
When is it that you saw what you believe to be homeless belongings in his car?
When I pulled in behind him, there appeared to be stuff up on top of the back seat. You know, that area up there, that little ledge behind the back seat. I saw a pile of a little bit of stuff up in the windows.
Okay, so this is when you pulled up behind him, correct?
Correct,
Okay. And then you two had this encounter, correct?
correct,
And then Mr. Altheimer got back in his car and he drove off, didn't he?
correct,
And that's when you called a South Sound 911 officer line, correct?
correct.
Okay. And that's because you knew that calling that officer line was the fastest and most direct way to get to a 911 dispatcher, correct?
That's the fastest in the line I've been using for 22 years, correct.
And it's the fastest way to get directly to a 911 dispatcher, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
It goes direct,
Court gave some leeway to the defense.
it goes directly to a dispatcher, correct.
And And then Mr. Shadle picked up and you told him what was going on, or at least you began to tell him what was going on, correct?
Correct.
Because as you're on the phone with Mr. Shadle, Mr. Altheimer's driven away, he's made a left into Deirdre Circle, came back, and then pulled up to your car, and that's how you end up facing each other, correct?
Correct.
And when Mr. Altheimer drove away, left into Deirdre Circle, prior to him coming back, did you lose sight of him?
Maybe for 10 to 15 seconds, it's a house, maybe a house too. That's why I thought maybe he made a U-turn, because he disappeared for a very short period of time.
And as all of that's occurring, Mr. Altheimer driving away and coming back, you're still on the phone with Mr. Shadle, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's because Mr. Shadle told you to stay on the phone with him until the police arrived, correct?
Correct.
And you did that, right?
Correct.
And you testified last week, he stayed and screamed and yelled until we heard the police sirens coming, then he hopped back in his car and so did I. Do you remember that testimony?
Correct.
Okay, so now we're at the second encounter, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay, and that's when you talked about the distance between this pole and you being about 20 feet, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the distance where while you're on the phone with Mr. Shadle, Mr. Altheimer is allegedly continuing to scream and yell at you. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
And if you had to hop back in your car, then you were outside of your car at some point, correct?
At that point, when he was at his car standing outside, I was standing by my door, yes.
And you also had testified that you didn't get out of your car during the first encounter because that's the worst thing you could have done
Correct.
to escalate the situation, correct?
Correct.
And yet during the second encounter, you did exit your car. didn't
Yes.
you? Okay. And you say Mr. Altheimer also exited his car?
Yes. We were both outside of our cars.
So even though you knew it was a bad idea to get out of your car during the first encounter, you got out of your car during the second encounter, correct?
There was enough distance between us where I felt I could get back to my car if I needed to. And I felt safe. He wasn't 3 or 4 feet from me. He was from here to the piling there, the wall.
Now, you never told Mr. Shadle that Mr. Altheimer was continuing to scream and yell at you, did you?
I told him that he was taking pictures of me or video, I thought video. And, and I wasn't understanding what he was saying at that point. So I was talking to the dispatcher and watching what's going on at the same time.
I'd move to strike that answer as non-responsive and repeat my question.
Sustained.
Now, you never told Mr. Shadle that Mr. Altheimer was continuing to scream and yell at you, correct?
Correct.
I do have an objection. I thought Your Honor earlier said you could only strike your own witness's testimony.
No.
That one. No, I take it back, Your Honor.
Objection withdrawn?
I'm sorry, Your Honor?
Is the objection withdrawn?
Yes, thank you.
You may continue.
I'll just repeat it because there was some over-talking, but
Yes.
I know you answered it already.
Yes.
Now, you never told Mr. Shadle that Mr. Altheimer was continuing to scream and yell at you, did you?
Correct.
In fact, what you told Mr. Shadle was that the two of you were in a stare-down, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that he was just staring at you with his headlights on, correct?
Correct.
And although Mr. Altheimer was continuing to scream and yell at you, you testified that he never came back at your car, correct?
That was correct. He never came back at my car.
Because if he had, you would have jumped back in your car.
Would have got back in my car, yes.
So Sheriff Troyer, if there was no contact between the two of you during this second encounter while you're on the phone with Mr. Shadle, why did you tell Mr. Shadle, I'm still here, I'm backing up, he's pushing against my car, so I'm backing up?
That was when he was at my car,
Are you talking about the first encounter?
the first encounter. Because I didn't make a call at all until after the first encounter. That's when I made the call. And I might have been, I might have been repeating what had happened because I was on the phone with them just talking about what happened, circumstances. That's why I said things a couple times over and over, because he told me to stay on the phone, stay on the phone with them. And a lot of times when I talk to dispatchers, and when they talk to me, we'll say things over and over until we acknowledge what the other one's saying, because I know I'm dealing with talking to him and what's going on. The dispatcher's dealing with multiple people as well at the same time. The officers arriving, the call, everybody. Yeah, sorry.
I understand. I'm still here. I'm backing up. He's pushing against my car, so I'm backing up 27th and Deirdre.
Correct.
Do you hear yourself saying that on the call?
Yes, I do.
Do you understand? Do you agree that those are present statements?
At the totality of the situation, those all occurred during that time period, yes.
You also told Mr. Shadle, I don't want anything other than him to just let me go home. Do you remember hearing that on the call?
Correct.
Okay, and yet when Mr. Altheimer left after your first encounter, you didn't go home, did you?
No, I was still there because I was on the phone with them and the police were already on their way, and I was going to obviously finish it out. I wanted I wanted the Tacoma police officers to come, de-escalate the situation, and if it wasn't a deal, or if it was a deal, or figure out what was going on. I made the call. The subject was suspicious, and then he was very aggressive with me. So at that point, I was waiting for the cops to come. Yeah.
I'm going to ask the court to strike your answer as non-responsive, and then I'm going to ask a yes or no question again, okay?
Overruled. Oh, no, the state is asking the court, based on a non-responsive answer, that is overruled. So the court's not going to strike the testimony as requested.
I have a yes or no question for you, Sheriff Troyer. I don't want anything other than him to let me go home, just let me go home. And my question is this: when Mr. Altheimer left after your first encounter, you didn't proceed to go home, did you?
No.
Okay. You instead called 911, correct?
Correct.
Objection, assumes facts not in evidence. It wasn't 911, it was an inter-department phone.
Overruled.
And then Mr. Altheimer, you lose sight of him and he comes back, and that takes about 10 seconds, is that correct?
See, I've testified many times. I just believed he made a U-turn and came back.
And now we're at this second encounter, and you're on the phone with Mr. Shadle. Okay, I'm just letting you know where we're at. And you tell Mr. Shadle, I'm trying to back up and let him go. He's not going to let me leave. You also said that to Mr. Shadle, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
But Sheriff Troyer, if you're standing outside your car, then you're not trying to back up and leave, are you?
Oh, yeah, I'd gotten back in my car when the sirens came, the same time he got back into his car. And there's a car on the side of the road, and then him, and I'm watching him, and I'm talking to Mr. Shadle. So I'm there. I'm not going anywhere until the police arrive. They're coming, they know I'm there, and they know he's there, so I'm there.
Sheriff Troyer, you know this call is a little less than 5 minutes, right?
Yes,
Okay, and the statements I just read to you are at .56 and 1.5 minutes.
okay,
I'm trying to back up and let him go. He's not going to let me leave. So that is about 3 to 4 minutes before the police arrive, correct?
correct.
So 3 to 4 minutes before the police arrive, you're telling Mr. Shadle that you're trying to back up, but you're not, are you?
Well, at that point, I might have gotten out of the car after that. Did you say it's just a minute into it?
3 minutes before the
I mean,
police.
I would really have to get a timeline out by minute by minute by minute. And 3 months had passed. Everything I'm saying has happened in this 5-minute window. I'm not trying to leave anything out, and I'm not trying to add anything.
Sheriff Troyer, can we agree that you don't back up until the police arrive?
I did at that point too, yes.
And you can see that on Officer Ventura's body camera, correct?
Correct. I can see it on a body camera.
And it doesn't appear that after the police arrive that you have any problem backing up. Is that a fair view of that body camera footage?
Yes, I backed up probably 4 or 5 feet.
Okay, and this is a very wide street, isn't it?
And so, yes, it is.
Okay, so you had plenty of room to back up at any time, turn around and leave. Isn't
But-
that true?
But once I called,
Yeah, I object and just ask that the witness
Yeah.
be allowed to not be interruptions.
This is a yes or no
Overruled.
question.
The objection is overruled based on the form of the question.
This is a very wide street, so you had plenty of room to turn around and leave at any time, right?
yes,
Now, Sheriff Troyer, you told Officer Lawless that before you went to find Mr. Altheimer, that you were home asleep, isn't that right?
no, I told him I was at home. I had just gotten home.
Did you see in his report that he said you were home asleep?
No.
Did you not tell, oh, you did not see
No,
that?
no, I mean, I believe you. Yeah, I mean, if he took it that way, I just told him I was home.
And you also told Officer Hobbs that you were home asleep before leaving to find Mr. Altheimer, isn't that true?
I don't think I said asleep because I had just gotten home. And at that point, I mean, you can show me and it might say that, but I was home. I had just gotten home. I'd literally been home less than a minute. And I wasn't asleep.
I am, but it's gonna take me a moment here. Oh, boy.
You start. It's not admitted.
Oh, may I approach?
Yes.
Guess I'm already
Do you-
halfway there.
Do you have, granted, but do you have a specific exhibit?
I do, I have states
19.
19.
You may approach.
I'm gonna ask you to read the second full paragraph to yourself. And when you're done, just look up, please.
Great. Yep,
So according to Officer Lawless's report, you told him you were home asleep before you went to find Mr. Altheimer, is that correct?
Objection, Your Honor, foundation. This is an exhibit that's not admitted, and it's not being used to refresh his memory or in any other way.
Overruled. The defense asked him about the exhibit and to critique the exhibit, so it's improper for the state to cross-examine on that.
Is that what Officer Lawless wrote in his report?
yes, it's just 3 or 4 sentences.
Did he write that you were home, that you told him you were home asleep before you went to find Mr. Altheimer?
Objection asked and answered.
He
Overruled.
didn't answer it, that's why. I'm asking.
Overruled.
Yes, that's what it says.
Okay. Now, prior to becoming the sheriff, you were the agency's public information officer for about 2 decades, correct?
Correct,
Okay. And I'm going to refer to that as the PIO, which is a term you're familiar with, correct?
correct,
Okay, and the PIO is the spokesperson for the agency, right?
correct,
And you testified last week that you're a law and order kind of person, right?
correct,
And during your campaign for sheriff and while working as the PIO, you've also made public statements expressing concern that law enforcement isn't always given the respect they deserve. Is that a fair characterization?
yes,
Do you think that's, especially nowadays, is that fair to say?
yes,
Now, you also testified last week that you spent your whole life getting along with everybody and taking care of people. Do you recall that?
I have spent my whole life trying to get along with everybody and taking care of people, absolutely.
Now, in 2015, a man named Rex Harper notified the Pierce County Sheriff's Office of an incident involving a Facebook exchange between you and him. Are you aware of that exchange?
Yes, I am.
And the reason Mr. Harper contacted the sheriff's office is because he felt that you had sent him a message that put him in fear of losing his job
Objection.
and in fear of retaliation from law enforcement. Is
Objection.
that correct?
Testifying, lack of foundation, hearsay.
Sustained.
Are you aware of the nature of Mr. Harper's complaint?
Yes, Rex Harper contacted me on Messenger, which is part of Facebook, was at the time, initiated this by sending me a message. And this how this contact started, and it was on my personal Facebook page.
And do you recall the nature of the message?
Yes,
Can you tell us what that was,
he
please?
said that my deputies got off easy and that the deputies should be thrown in jail, and was derogatory towards our people.
And this was a message sent after a civil lawsuit had been settled where his mentally disabled cousin had died
Your I object
while
to
in
counsel
police
testifying
custody. Is
again.
that correct?
She's not testifying, she's asking a question. So the question,
Did you hear it?
Yes,
no, I didn't, so if you please ask the question.
And Sheriff, Rex Harper, when he Facebook messaged you, it was regarding a mentally disabled cousin of his who had died in police custody. Is that correct?
Objection, lack of foundation, hearsay.
He may answer if he knows. If he
At
has
that point, I
personal
didn't-
knowledge-
You need,
He may answer if he has personal knowledge in response to the question. Otherwise, the objection is sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
at that point, I didn't know who, what, where, how, or who he's a relative to. I just got the threat towards our, what he was saying about our deputies needing to be in jail and that we got off easy or lucky or something along that lines to me. And when he sent it to me, he sent it to my personal Facebook page. It sounded like he was angry, and it came with a photo because when you do Messenger or something, your photo can be attached.
so is it your testimony that your department got off cheap in this case, your men should go to jail, that you took that as a threat?
I took that as he,
Just a second.
Objection, hearsay, argumentative, seems facts not in evidence.
He just said it was a threat.
Just a second. He may answer if he has personal knowledge to answer the question.
Did you
Otherwise,
just-
the objection is sustained.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you just testify that you took Mr. Harper's message as a threat?
I took his message as concerning and something I should be concerned about, and he thought my guy should be in jail and that we got off easy.
Did you testify to questions
Yes,
earlier?
yes, I
that
did.
you took that as a threat?
Okay, that's what you're answering? Yes.
And because you took that as a threat, you responded to Mr. Harper, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you responded, "Hi Rex, in the sport of fairness."
Your Honor, again, I object to counsel testifying, hearsay.
Sustained.
How did you respond? And just to be clear, you're responding through Facebook Messenger, right?
My personal Facebook page, Facebook Messenger, correct. To his Messenger, yes.
And let me ask a preliminary question before that. You've been explaining Facebook Messenger, and you started saying you can hit the face and then get other photos and information. Is that correct?
If you're friends, I think, I'm not really sure. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Before messaging Mr. Harper back, were you able to determine anything else about him?
So I get threats all the time, and I'm not worried about them, but in this particular incident, I was worried about it.
Were you able to determine where Mr. Harper worked?
Yes, he had a picture of him with Seattle police officers and King County police officers with a security jacket on, and he was with other people in law enforcement.
Correct. Yes. And how did you respond on the messenger app?
I told, I think you have it if you want me to read it.
Okay.
No objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you.
Thought she said-
I can give you my best,
I'm sorry.
I can give you my best,
Sorry, Sheriff, I thought she said no objection.
No, I thought you
I
said
said
objection.
objection.
Did I hear you correctly?
Yes, she did, Your Honor.
Objection, sustained.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry, I thought I heard no objection. Sheriff Troyer, were you interviewed about this by your police department?
yes.
To the best of your knowledge, can you tell me how you responded?
No, I can't.
Okay. If I read the response can you tell me if the substance of it is accurate?
Yes.
Okay. High Rex in the
Okay, Your
sport
Honor.
of fairness.
Second.
Now I object. All the same bases previously stated. Hearsay. Counsel's testifying, assumes facts not in evidence, are not proper rebuttal on character, and not proper impeachment.
Sustained.
Sheriff Troyer, do you remember substantially how you responded?
No, because I know I would have been polite, because I always am. And I remember being concerned because he was with other law enforcement and that I was going to let the other law enforcement know about what he had said to us. And I think that's pretty close to being it.
Okay, and it sounds like you have an independent recollection of this event. Is that fair to say?
That's about it right there.
Okay, and if I showed you a report, would that refresh your memory as to what you, how you responded?
Just same objections as previously stated.
I'm seeking to
withdraw motion,
refresh
Sheriff.
his memory.
Are you referring to Exhibit CC or something else?
CC, not to admit into evidence, but to show to him to refresh his memory.
Refresh his memory?
Yes, to refresh his
Sustained.
memory. I can't refresh his memory?
If I understand that you want to show Exhibit CC to refresh memory, the objection is sustained. If I'm understanding correctly what the state's intending to seek.
You testified that you felt Mr. Harper had shown animosity towards the police. Is that correct?
Yeah, he said my guy should be in jail.
And you took that as a threat, correct?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did you threaten to do anything to Mr. Harper?
To do anything to him?
Yes.
No.
Did you threaten to advise anybody about him?
Yes.
What was that?
That I was just going to relay the message that he sent our department to the police officers in King County in Seattle. That I thought that they should be aware.
And you also told him that you were going to include his photo, didn't you?
Well,
Objection. Again, same bases, Your Honor. You answered the question as well.
Objection overruled if he has personal knowledge, if not, the objection sustained.
the photo that he sent, and he's with the police, and he has a security jacket on. That way they would know who he is. And that was the end of our communication.
Now, Sheriff, one of the primary functions of the PIO is to talk to the media, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and when you're communicating information, it's important to be accurate, right?
Well, we've talked about this before.
To the best of one's
the
ability.
Your Honor, if you could finish his answer. He was still speaking.
Anyone asking me to do anything, or?
I'll repeat the question and let him answer. Is that
Fair
right?
enough.
That's repeat, yes.
And when you're communicating information, it's important to be accurate, right?
It's duly important to be accurate, and it's important to get information out to the public as soon as you possibly can, that is accurate as possible at the time, correct?
Okay, and it's especially important to communicate accurate information when talking to a 911 dispatcher, right?
Correct.
Now, during your first encounter when Mr. Altheimer was allegedly yelling at you, you couldn't understand everything he was saying, right?
Correct.
But you did hear the phrase, "take me out."
Correct.
But you didn't exactly know what he meant by that, did you?
Oh, between him saying that and his body language and the rest of the screaming, I took it as the worst possible case scenario in order to relay that to the dispatcher so the officers knew what they were getting into when they get there. And I have no doubt that if I would have got out of the car at that point when he was that angry, that I would have been on the losing end of something.
Sheriff, you testified last week.
Mhm.
I think he wanted to like take me out and fight, or get me, or kill me, or something, or I don't know. He was so angry. So I'll ask you again, Sheriff, isn't it true that you didn't know what Mr. Altheimer meant when he allegedly said he would take you out?
It could have been any of those things.
And when you called the 911 dispatcher, you never told him that Mr. Altheimer had threatened to take you out, did you?
I told them right at the beginning the totality of what I was experiencing. Correct.
And you never used those words, did you?
Correct. Because there was other, never mind.
Instead, you told Mr. Shadle repeatedly, what you told Mr. Shadle repeatedly was that Mr. Altheimer had threatened to kill you, right?
Correct.
You told Mr. Shadle he wants to kill me, isn't that right?
He looked pretty determined. Correct.
And you also never told Mr. Shadle that the reason you wanted the police to respond is because you just wanted someone to come calm things down.
That would have been obvious. I didn't want to interact with them any further, and I wanted the Tacoma police to come there to de-escalate the situation. So I guess your answer is yes.
You never told Mr. Shadle that the reason you wanted the police to come was to either calm things down or to de-escalate the situation. Isn't that correct?
Say it again?
You never told Mr. Shadle that the reason you wanted the police to come was to de-escalate the situation or to calm things down.
When I said I only need 1 or 2 units, that's what they would be there for. Everybody would know that I needed help, and that's what they would do when they get there and do whatever they normally would do when they show up to a scene where that's just the obvious. I needed help, and I wasn't going to get involved.
But you never told Mr. Shadle what you wanted the officers to do when they arrived.
No, because I would leave that up to the officers who showed up and determined what they needed to do, because it'd be their call, their situation.
Now, Sheriff, the reason it's important to provide accurate information to a 911 dispatcher is because the information that dispatch receives, as you've testified, goes to the responding officers, right? And their safety depends on having as much accurate information as possible, correct?
Correct.
And one of the things that makes police work dangerous is that police officers often walk into unknown situations. Fair to say?
Fair to say.
And because of that, it's important for an officer to have as much relevant information as possible when responding to the scene of a potential crime, right?
Correct.
Especially if they're responding to a crime involving threats of violence, right?
Correct.
And one of the most important pieces of information a responding officer needs to know is whether a subject is armed, right?
Correct.
And yet when Mr. Shadle asked you whether Mr. Altheimer had a gun, your response was, I have no idea. He looks homeless in his car. Did you hear yourself saying that on the call?
Correct. I had no idea. I had no idea if he had a gun.
When Mr. Shadle asked you a specific question about guns, why did you feel that Mr. Shadle and the responding officers needed to know that Mr. Altheimer looked homeless in his car?
Because some people in that particular neighborhood up at the shopping centers are living in cars, and they've had confrontations with them before, and I just, like you said, they give them all the information you can give them, and that's what I did. I gave him the information that I thought that he could be. He even called his own car bucket, and the car looked out of place, no headlights on, and could have been somebody that was living up. Unfortunately, this is the way it is nowadays, but we have people living in cars all over 8 blocks away from our house. Multiple people, they're still there.
What were the belongings you believe that you saw in the back of his car
I could-
that made you think he looked homeless?
I couldn't even tell what it was. It was just stuff piled up, and that's kind of how when we see cars like that. And my wife has helped those people many times. It's just that when I saw the
So
stuff,
you don't know what you saw. You saw items.
I just saw items. I just saw items.
You couldn't see that it was a sleeping bag, correct?
Was it a sleeping bag?
No.
Oh,
You couldn't tell what you were looking at, correct?
correct. I couldn't tell what it was.
If you were looking at a tent or a sleeping bag or
Correct.
anything, do you?
Correct.
you mentioned him referring to his own car as a bucket in a neighborhood. You later referred to it as a homeless-looking scion. Do you remember that?
A what?
A homeless-looking scion, S-C-I-O-N.
Oh, I didn't say that, I said sedan.
A homeless-looking sedan.
I said it looked like a sedan.
Okay.
Yeah.
A homeless-looking sedan.
Something to the effect of that could be,
Did
I
the,
think I said that.
did the age and model of the car contribute to your belief that he was homeless?
The condition of the car, the stuff piled on top, the way he was behaving, the non-responsiveness to how I found other people in that particular thing that may have issues. And I'm not saying he did, but other people that I've encountered have issues that are living in their cars. And once again, it was just relaying information to the police officers that were arriving of what they might be coming into.
Now, you never actually saw Mr. Altheimer steal any packages, did you?
No,
Because if you had, you would have told Mr. Shadle that, right?
correct.
And you don't know one way or the other if you ever called Mr. Altheimer a, quote, porch pirate. Was that your testimony?
Well, I did say that. I've said that a few times now. Porch pirate, it's, yeah.
Did you say that to Mr. Altheimer?
I don't believe I said it to him. I know I did say it to the dispatcher.
And it was your testimony that a porch pirate is someone who steals things off of porches, right?
Correct.
And you don't find that to be a derogatory term?
Well, not, Your Honor, should I answer that?
Well, you testified that you didn't think that was a
Well,
derogatory term.
I know, but you guys used it derogatory earlier as it's a race issue, and I didn't use it as a race issue. I use it as somebody that goes into people's driveways and steals packages off porches, so I don't know what you're asking me.
What I'm asking is, did you testify earlier today that in your belief that porch pirate is not a derogatory term?
It's a term I think everybody knows for people that steal stuff off people's porches.
And did you testify earlier that you didn't think it was that's not a derogatory term?
It's a term of fact of what I'm trying to explain somebody's doing. I'm not, nothing derogatory. I mean, I think you can turn on the TV every day and hear that term, or punch into any video or social media service and see hundreds of videos of it with the term porch pirate.
After the incident we're talking about was over, okay? Earlier the next morning, and we're talking the same morning now on the 27th, okay? You indicated that you had had some social media communications with some of your neighbors. Do you recall that testimony?
I think it might have been the next day, or maybe even 2 days after, I'm not sure.
And you received a message from a neighbor, a Facebook message from a neighbor named Trevin Anderson. Do you remember that?
If you read, no. If you read it to me and told it to me, then yeah. I get hundreds of messages on Facebook. It's the only social media I use, and,
Right, hold on, I'm gonna have it marked for you.
okay. I just don't know which one you're talking about.
I understand. And rather than me reading it, I'm gonna mark it for you.
I got it.
DD. I need to put it up.
What's up?
Sheriff Troyer, this was
Your Honor.
marked.
Should be 20.
Your Honor,
Oh, state, I'm sorry.
get my glasses. Sorry, I left them on the table.
Are your glasses back at council table?
This exhibit is marked as Exhibit 20.
2.5.
About the same. Sheriff, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit, losing my balance here, State's Exhibit 20. It's 2 pages. I'm going to ask you to read both of them quietly to yourself, take all the time you need, and then just look up when you're done reading.
I don't think, you want me to read that whole thing?
I want you to read it to yourself, and then I'll have some questions about it. Does that make sense? And I'll be careful in my questioning. I understand why you're asking me that.
Okay, I don't want to,
I
okay,
understand.
all right.
Have you read both of them?
Yes,
Okay. So this is I'm sorry, what exhibit is it? 20?
20.
Does that refresh your memory as to a Facebook exchange you had with Mr. Anderson?
Yes,
Okay, so Mr. Anderson, after this event was over at about 9:30, messaged you to ask you why there was such a large police response that a few hours ago, correct?
correct.
And then you responded back to him later that evening on the 27th, is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
And there again, you told Mr. Anderson that Mr. Altheimer was living out of his car, correct?
it says that,
You're not
Yeah,
allowed
yes.
to read from a document,
Oh.
sorry.
okay,
Did you tell Mr. Anderson that Mr. Altheimer was living out of his car?
yes,
Okay, but by that time, you knew that wasn't true, right?
correct,
And you also told Mr. Anderson that Mr. Altheimer was delivering papers for a friend, but that's not true either, was it? You'd been advised that he was delivering his own newspaper on his own newspaper route, correct?
correct.
And you've since heard in court from his boss, Mr. Steiner, that he's been doing that in that neighborhood for about 2 years. Do you recall that testimony?
Correct. But I had never met him. Yeah,
Now, you also told Mr. Anderson that the guy, Mr. Altheimer, was driving in and out of driveways, stopped in the street and yelled at your house, and when you looked out, he launched a newspaper at your house, right?
correct.
And you described him as, quote, anti-cop, right?
Well, that would be correct.
Now, nowhere in your response to Mr. Anderson, where he's asking you about the large police presence, did you ever say that Mr. Altheimer had threatened to kill you, right?
Correct,
Or that he had threatened to take you out, right?
correct,
Or that he had threatened you in any way, correct?
correct.
Now, Sheriff, you said you have 800 officers under you, is that correct?
Yeah, give or take 20. Well, no, employees,
Okay.
employees.
How many police officers? 300?
About 350 deputies and another high 200, low 300 corrections officers.
Okay.
But they're also called deputies.
Now, Sheriff, do you agree that as sheriff, one of your highest duties and priorities is to protect the men and women who serve under you?
Correct,
And if one of your deputies called a police dispatcher, said that someone who knows he's a police officer just threatened to kill him, you'd want the dispatcher to treat that as the highest priority, wouldn't you?
I'd want them to do what they needed to get done, whatever the deputy was asking for, because these things happen. I mean, it happened while people are on duty and while they're out on the road, and communication is important, yes, whatever.
Let me ask you, it's a yes or no question. These are people who serve under you, correct?
Correct,
You're in charge of their safety.
correct,
If one of your deputies who serves under you called a police dispatcher and said someone who knows he's a police officer just threatened to kill him, you'd want the dispatcher to treat that as the highest priority, wouldn't you?
Well-
That's what you would want.
this is what this was treated like, was the highest priority, yes, and I would want them, they asked for 1 or 2 units, I would definitely want to make sure they got their 1 or 2 units, absolutely.
My question is, would you, if one of your deputies called and said that their life had been threatened outside of their home by someone who knows they're a cop. One of your deputies said that to a 911 dispatcher. Would you want 911 to send everyone?
No.
No more questions.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Facebook post that you were just asked about, where does that neighbor live in relation to your house?
I don't know. It's somewhat, I really, I don't know. It's just somebody, in fact, I don't know if I've ever even met him.
Okay. And were you talking about, largely about the second incident when Alzheimer came back to your house?
What I did with the Facebook post is just try and consolidate, and I wasn't trying to make a big deal about it into just one little thing of information. I wasn't about to write pages of stuff.
Okay.
I just wanted the neighbor to know that the cops were there, this is what happened. And if there's some wordsmithing or a few words wrong, it just wasn't anything official. It's just me communicating with the neighbor who communicated with me.
What did the neighbor ask you?
I'm not, I can't read from this, can I? Can I?
To refresh your memory about what he asked you and what you responded to.
He basically said, Ed, at 2 a.m. this morning, there were cops by my neighborhood, and I heard some with lights on, and they were there for a bit, and it seemed pretty serious. Can you tell me what happened? And then everybody drove off.
Okay. So that, on Facebook, you responded in
Yeah,
general.
Facebook is not my friend.
Well,
But Facebook is, these are my personal Facebook page again, too.
right.
And and at this point, I thought it was a done deal. I was just letting them know it happened, and it was over.
And I guess you're also trying to say it's safe now.
Correct.
Okay. So you're not going to say I was threatened too, necessarily, is that
No,
right?
I wasn't going to give them details.
Could you ask a question again, please?
Yeah, I said, so you weren't going to say I was threatened too when you're telling him the neighborhood's safe.
Sustained.
Why didn't you indicate in that note to your neighbor that you were threatened?
It was over. I didn't think a report was being written. I didn't want to worry him. I don't make a big deal about it. I just gave him a very short version of the totality of what happened. And he went, and then that was it. He never replied to me again or anything, so I'm pretty sure that sufficed to explain. I sure don't want to terrorize my neighbors, you know.
So he didn't have any more questions to you
No.
about what was going on?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
And when he sent you that note, did he even know that you were involved in the large police presence or the police presence in the neighborhood?
No.
Protection, lack of personal knowledge.
Sustained.
Do you know whether or not he knew whether you were involved in any way?
No.
Okay. You were also asked about the report, exhibit number 19, which is Officer Lawless's report.
Yes.
Is it still up there with you?
No. Oh, yes.
And you were asked by the Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General, about whether or not the report says you were home asleep when this happened.
Yes.
Is that true? Were you home asleep?
No.
And I think we've already talked about this report and your criticisms of it. She also asked you if Officer Hobbs said that too. Does Officer Hobbs anywhere in that report say you were home asleep?
No.
Okay. You were asked about, on a police response, whether you would want a full or fuller response with any of your deputies if there was threats to kill. But you didn't ask for that here.
No, I asked for 1 or 2 units, and
Why?
because I figured that's all it needed to be to take care of the situation.
Okay. Also about being blocked in, and actually if we could use the easel, Your Honor, it won't take very long. I want him to draw where the cars were, because there were other cars on the street. And so I think we could do it tomorrow, or,
Well, I just want to see if there's an objection or not.
oh, okay.
Your Honor, there's no objection, and if it's possible to run just a little bit longer today, I don't think I'll have any recross.
Granted.
Can we use one of
I
the,
have the ability to change my mind, but I can see that I may not have recross.
Yeah, so
And then we
yes,
can
you
fix
may
the
do that if that's what you choose to do.
Thank you.
We need to mark it though.
Are you gonna make me draw?
This is,
We'll get a grand finale of your testimony, Sheriff. Here we go. If you could step over to the easel.
What color do you want me to use?
Black is fine, maybe, yeah, black or blue.
Because it's gonna end
Red's
up all
not
over
as
my
good.
hands.
Do you want
just a
to,
second. I want to make sure we mark it and know what the number or letter is.
which one's best for you? I don't want to get stuff on your hands.
D, Delta, Delta.
ED?
Thank you.
And all the jurors see the easel there. I'm seeing everybody nod their head.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you, Emmett. What I'd like you to draw, Sheriff, is that, we've already seen the map of where you went. But now I want to just draw the street where you came upon Mr. Alzheimer.
The first time when I got there,
Yes.
in which direction to put the cars and everything?
Yep.
Do you want me to write the road numbers down?
No, you don't, I mean, just,
I think that's.
which one's the, what's the name of the street?
27th. Oh, this is Deidre right here. This is Deidre, and I think there's one house on each side, then a circle right there.
Okay, and just show us where 27th is then, just to
Right
give us
here.
context. Okay. So when he first came in, you're basically behind him, is that right?
Correct.
And then when he, and are there any other cars in the street or in the area?
There's a car parked over here.
Okay. And then he drove into the circle and turned around? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, can you just draw an arrow showing what he did?
I saw him going there, and then for a few seconds he was gone. I don't know if he went all the way up here or what, but he was just gone for a few seconds and came back out at me.
Okay. And so the confrontation that you had with him, that he had with you at your car, did it happen before or after he went and turned around in the circle and faced you?
Before.
Okay. And so once he faced you,
Mm-hmm.
there were references to him, you're blocking him or he's blocking you. Were you talking about the other car being there, or what was your reference?
Both of, we're blocking each other. We're facing each other with our headlights on. He pulled right up in front of me, and I hadn't moved, and my headlights were on.
Okay.
You know, and,
That's all you have to draw.
that's all I have to draw?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And it's marked. Actually, you can put that back there. Just a
Okay.
couple final questions.
All right.
You were basically informed by the governor's office in April of 2021 that there'd be an investigation, is that right?
Objection, motion to eliminate.
Sustained.
Your Honor, you were basically just told that there were people that tried to get a hold of you from these attorneys' office? Was it either of these attorneys, do you know?
No, it wasn't either of them.
Okay. And was there an investigation at that time?
Yes, I knew there was an investigation going.
And did you follow your lawyer's advice to not talk to them?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Finally, on the threat, did you take the threat, I'll take you out, as a threat to kill you?
Correct, yes. With the totality of the way he was acting and that, I thought, worst case thing that's going to happen here. And I wanted to make sure, and the reason why I said it a couple times is because I wanted to make sure the dispatcher acknowledged me saying that, because I know he's got a lot going on. Yep,
And the dispatcher, just like we see on television shows, will be talking to someone and someone will be saying, can you get here, can you get here? And not even knowing that the dispatcher's already dispatched help. So you were
Right.
still talking to the dispatcher at that time and repeating, is that right?
right. And sometimes when you talk to a dispatcher, you won't get an answer because the other side might be more important for them to be talking to at the time. And I know that sometimes the answers could come 20, 30 seconds later.
Okay. But basically help was on the way.
Correct.
Thank you, Sheriff, that's all I have.
Redirect, or recross, I'm sorry.
No recross, Your Honor.
Let me step down.
Do you, sir, want the reports, or do I give them to see them there?
To the defense, is this a good time to break for the day?
It is, Your Honor, thank you.
And so, members of the jury, we're going to break for the day. I've read it enough, so I'm not going to read it this time. But no talking to anybody about this case, and certainly no independent research of any source about this case, and you all know that. So, have a great evening. We will.
Your Honor, actually, before we excuse the jury, the defense rests.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Defense rests.
Good call.
This is maybe premature, so I don't want to put anybody in a bind, but do you anticipate rebuttal witnesses?
No.
This was important because this is helping the court decide when I should have you back tomorrow. And so if you would please be back in the jury room by 10:30 tomorrow, that would be helpful. You do not need to be here earlier than that. There are some matters I need to take care of. And so if you'd be here by 10:30 in the jury room, that would be timely for the court. So now you are excused. And still, no talking to anybody about the case.
They go. But we still have to make a motion to dismiss or do jury instructions. We probably won't be back in front of the jury until we said 10:30. Yeah.
The jury has exited the courtroom. Everyone may be seated. And counsel, I really want to thank you for that because I too was thinking, if I have the jury back, you know we have things we need to talk about tomorrow morning. I want to give them a little bit of a break if I can to come in. So
Thank you.
that's why the 10:30. And I figured depending upon what we need, how long we need to talk tomorrow morning, I may well take the morning recess a little bit early. So when they are here around 10, we can perhaps get started.
Yes,
So
okay.
counsel could be back here by 8:45 and ready to go tomorrow. We have not talked about instructions. We have not talked about whether the exhibits, whether there should be a playback device in the jury room with respect to electronic exhibits. And it's been a long day for all of you, and so let's talk about that tomorrow.
Thank you, Your Honor.
So at this time, the court is at recess, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.